Good morning.
Good morning. Top of the morning.
Top of the
to you,
morning,
sir.
to you. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
We have reorganized our Zoom screen, so we can now look right at all of our Zoomers.
We're
online.
looking through you, deep into your soul. So how many of you would like to have a great day today? How many of you, both of you, huh? How many of you would like to have whatever day? Yeah. Whatever you'd like, talk to your boss. Okay.
So we're on day 2 of this module, which means we're on steps 3 and 4. Yesterday, though, we were really, talking about and exploring and experiencing and practicing these first 2 steps, which are really the foundation for the whole coaching session. If we're not in a coach state and we don't create a coach field, things are not going to be in a very productive, not going to go very productively. And if we don't have anywhere to go, if we're not clear on where the direction is, there's also not much progress that's likely to be made.
So one of the main words that we could use to describe coach state is connection. Our mutual mentor, Gregory Bateson, used to talk about the pattern that connects. And we're saying it's all about creativity. That's the core. Creativity is always a conversation. And it's a conversation where the differences are really experiencing an interconnectedness. So 1 + 1 = 3.
Or more. Sometimes.
Or more, yeah. And so we could say then, in the same way, that persistent suffering, which is where we're coming in, we're not coming in where a person has developed a problem the hour before the session. When people come to you for coaching, they usually have been struggling with a particular issue for quite a long time. And despite the fact that we just assume they're reasonably intelligent, they're motivated, something's not happening. And we're saying that this is an expression of disconnection. So there's some major disconnection, and from that disconnection, negative things happen.
And that disconnection could either be from themselves.
Could be this upstairs and downstairs aren't talking. We say the elevators aren't going up and down.
It could be a disconnection from whatever their intent is, their desired state is.
It could be a disconnection from the verbal mind to nature, which we're getting a lot of feedback on right now about how human consciousness has worked out a way to be totally dissociated from nature.
Could be disconnection from other resources, from our lineage, from our ancestors and our historical past.
Could be a disconnection from whoever you're working with, your work partner, or intimacy partner, or your kids. But it's connection that we're looking for. It's a relational connection between different things. That's what we're focusing on.
That's why in the coach state, one of those key C's is connect. Get online. Get everything booted up and online, for a technical metaphor. But when that happens, then you've got all of the possible intelligences active, and then you can really. That's where you can be generative. That's where I can get to this place where I can reach into what we're calling that quantum field of many possibilities and bring one into some kind of concrete expression.
So one example of that, or a model of that, we started with yesterday, what is called the radical embodied cognition model of the 5 E's. They said that the representation has to be positively connected through the body into context, expressed into the world, and in feedback with whatever the whole system is. And those are 5 major connections. And so it allows us to practically track where is it that things are getting blocked so that creativity is not able to be expressed. And we say, okay, words, body, context, expression, who else is present in the context, and what is the pattern of connection or disconnection among the different parts of the conversational space.
Now, today, when we go into step 3, that whole pattern and network, let's say, of connection becomes absolutely essential. Step 3 is all about multiple connections to ourselves, connections to that intention, and then especially connections to a bigger field of resources that we need in order to be able to actually, move towards that intention and make it real.
So this image up here, this is a snapshot of Robert in the morning before he puts his clothes on.
That's what I look like after the run.
After the run, yeah. Yeah. That's why he runs for 2 hours to look like that when he gets out of the shower.
Out of the shower. Exactly.
Yeah. So in the step 3 that we'll focus on this morning, then this afternoon will be step 4. The prototype is what we call the 3 positive connections. And 3 positive connections are the sense of connection to an intention or positive value or commitment. And notice that we're somatically modeling it like this, because it's not something that you're just holding inside of your head. It only becomes real when you lift it out of your body and bring it into the world. So that's the first connection.
In fact, the word intention literally means that you are stretching out, right? You're taking something from in and stretching it out. And that's what we talked about, that kind of creative tension that brings, because there's that movement. And then there's the second connection, which is to some kind of somatic living center in the present.
And we're really emphasizing that your verbal mind is always at best a secondary intelligence. If you want to create something new, your verbal mind is only a manager. It only knows how to rearrange the chairs on the Titanic. So we need good managers. If we don't have good managers, nothing generative happens. But if we're going to let something new come in, which is really one of the main foci of coaching, is that we need to create a new understanding, a new set of relationships, a new behavior. It's not going to come from your verbal mind.
And we want to emphasize, I think it's obvious, neither of us have anything against the verbal mind. Having written 28 books, it's like I don't have a bias against the verbal mind. I've got a really active one. I just know it's not that's not where the creativity comes from. It's an expressor, like Steve says, it's the manager. Mozart said the same thing. He said, yeah, the notes, I don't sit down and I can't force the music. It comes to me. It comes through me. And then I write it down afterwards. So that's not where the creativity is.
We were talking yesterday, just maybe in passing, about this first conversation is between what we would call a quantum world that's before time and space, that has no form. David Bohm called it the implicate order. It's this sort of field from which all reality unfolds, explained to put it out onto a plane. And he talked about, there's also a lot of traditions like the Hindu tradition, that there are these gateways or these portals between the two worlds. And that's what we mean by the center. So the center isn't a muscular thing, it's not a thing, but it's a passageway. And you say, well, why here? Because it's a passageway where all this different information energy is converging in a way that you can bring it into the world in a unified way. So most, different traditions, emphasize a different number of centers. The Hindu term is chakra, which you may know means a wheel. And so these are the vortex places where all these things start sort of spinning around. And so a center is not muscular. In fact, you have to have full presence, but you have to relax. And then your mind becomes not your historical conditioned individual mind, but your mind is the mind of the universe. So anytime we need to go beyond where we've been before, this mind can't get you there. It only knows how to repeat versions of the past.
Well, that's why we say that's our second connection. One is to that intention. Two is to this inner portal where the reality, the energy to create that reality is going to come through. And then the third is to, and as this kind of picture is showing there, this bigger field of resources that we are part of. One of the key concepts that we use in generative change work is originated by Arthur Kessler, known as what you called holon. The idea of holon is a term that he made up to mean that everything in the universe is a whole in and of itself, but it's made up of other wholes and it's part of bigger wholes. Just like our being, I'm a whole person, but I've got whole parts. I have a whole hand. That hand has whole fingers. The fingers have whole digits. Those digits are made of tissues. Tissues are made of cells. Those cells are made of molecules. Molecules made of atoms, so on and so forth. But I am also part of progressively bigger system, part of a family system, part of a professional community, part of a cultural system, part of a social community, part of an environmental system, so on and so on and so forth. So wherever there's disconnection in any of these parts of this holarchy, you call it, you're going to have predictable problems. And they will show up as, pretty repeating symptoms. So this is something that as a generative coach, we're always, when we look at a person, we don't just see this one part or one expression of a person. We're realizing that there's much, much more going on. So this is a key to our third connection is I want to try to get access to those aspects of that holon as fully as possible.
So I was mentioning yesterday, Jung used the term community of saints, and non-religiously, more mythologically, talk about who can you call upon, who do you know really loves you and supports you and can be able to be part of your team as you go to bring something important in the world. You cannot do it as an isolated individual. You cannot do it as an isolated individual. Robert's talking about all these levels of self, but all of those levels are relationship systems, so to speak. And probably the worst thing about the Western consciousness is really breaking off the individual perspective from the collective perspective. And we're facing the damages now. We're at the end of this very deteriorated version of the isolated individual, not operating in connection with the whole. And so that third distinction, so it's what's this, and what's that? Who can you call upon as a resource? Resource means anything which gets you back to your source. So that could be, I need protection. It could be, I need to be playful. What's your name again?
Dean.
Yeah, so Dean was saying, I really need a resource of playfulness. So who would be a representative of playfulness for you that you would want to invite and weave into yourself? I may need to have a model that it's possible, or a model that somebody like me can do it. Somebody who looks more like me.
That helps me to know I'm capable. So, and unfortunately, a lot of our modern technology, our social media, doesn't actually promote us to go like that. It promotes us to stay in a bubble that just mirrors back my own, my own thoughts, my own sense. So I'm actually not as more connected. I'm more disconnected.
Oh, thank you.
There you go.
You got green on it, so okay, just be careful not too much. Yeah. So no, it's just really present to the whole and the whole.
Yeah.
So and as much as I talked today, I said, oh, today's all about magic, I'm creating.
Yeah.
But I am very present. I'm always looking for the whole.
Yes. Yeah.
It's not the whole.
Yeah.
And so it's just all I was just gonna say. It's just like it's very easy to look for what's wrong, and
Yes.
that's how we're programmed, obviously.
Yes.
Eventually, but just take a different kind of commitment to direct energy in a different direction
Exactly.
about the whole.
The whole instead of, as you say,
and they sound exactly the same, but they're completely not.
Yeah.
So that's all I was just gonna
Thank
mention.
you. And I think that's a
you.
really important,
Thank
it's important, another kind of important principle of generative change, and also is one of our NLP sort of presuppositions, is that energy follows attention. Energy flows where your attention goes. So if I put that attention onto the obstacle, that creates crash. If I can keep my attention onto the, as you were saying, the whole, then I'm able to, I have many possibilities.
So that's what we mean by this being the underbelly.
Yeah.
What's your intention that's sort of taking everything? What's your base underneath your verbal mind that's always gossiping and criticizing? Boom, boom. And who's your community to which you belong? And when you have those three connections, life is a group.
So we talk about this idea of focused spaciousness, right? So I need that focus. I need to stay spacious. And that then allows me to have that kind of complementary, those two complements, so that I can deal with whatever's coming up and not lose my way. So, and I think, we've been saying, yesterday we were talking about this sort of this vertical axis, then we have an interesting horizontal axis, and now we have this third axis. So we're really trying to bring all of these things together. There's my center, there's my direction, there's my community, my field.
You see this, it's so obvious that things like performance art, like sports or music or something like that, that every member of the team has to be in excellence, but it's really the connection between the different members that's what lifts the performance to generative levels. They're and the American Basketball League, there's a guy, I think James Harden, I call him the beard, and he's gotten better, but about 4 years ago he's like the best scorer in the league, and they're in the playoffs, and his team wasn't doing so well, and at halftime you get the ex-players like Charles Barkley and Kenny Smith, and they're saying, well, his team's never going to win anything. And they say, why? And they said, because he doesn't play defense. So when you get into the playoffs, defense becomes important. And this guy, Kenny Smith, said, it's not that hard. He said, what defense means as a team is you're imagining that you have a rope, an energy rope coming from your center here, and it's connected to everybody on your team. So when one member of the team moves that way, the whole team is feeling that connection. And he said, that's how you work as a team. He said, it's like James Harden cuts the rope. and not only does it put him in not a generative state, but all of his teammates, because that creative tension between all the different parts. So our team is coach, field, intention, center, resources.
And kind of like what you were saying is, if my attention is only on one of those, that's where all the energy is going. And so the real trick, and this is, I mean, and it's easy to say, it's not easy to do, especially in a challenging circumstance, is I can't put all of my attention there, can't put it all here, I can't put it all there. I'm distributing it rhythmically between these different dimensions. And if I start to lose one, then again, you're going to find very predictable problems. If I lose that connection to myself, it's going to be predictable problems coming up because now I'm only focused there.
Like that guy I was talking about, I have to finish this project and trying to focus on the intention, he's lost himself. So for example, say you have a teamwork like Robert and me. What do you think is more important for me to focus on Robert?
Yes.
Or for me to, that's what he tells me all the time. Or for me just to focus on me. I have to stay connected to me, Robert. So what do you think is more important? Because it's a silly question, right? So there's some sort of balance. So we got a little bit of this and a little bit of that.
And then there's that third connection, which is on you. Right? So we need to keep that focus on you, on ourselves, on each other.
That's how we make babies. Little yin, a little yang. Boom.
So do we have any poems about this?
Moving
morning,
right along
Steve?
here. So we go from the sublime to the sacred here.
Okay.
So the poem I want to share with you is from our now late great American poet Mary Oliver. It was very well known. You'd see this is probably her most well-known poem. It's called Wild Geese. You have geese in England?
Oh yeah, you go out in the park. I'm running in the park. There's a lot of geese. And you got to watch out for the geese droppings. In fact, it's another way you know that they're there.
You know they have these great migratory processes, and in the U.S. and they go from around Washington D.C. and they go all the way up to Canada and then back, and the sky is just filled with these wild geese, and she uses that. And you hear, I selected this poem because I thought it's such a beautiful description of the three connections. You see her talking about the verbal mind, the embodied mind, where she says you only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves, and the field mind. So that's the focus for this morning. So here's Wild Geese. This first line is for all the recovering Catholics. It says, you do not have to be good. Oh, why didn't they tell us? You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. I'm sorry. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees. Meanwhile, the wild geese high in the clean blue air are heading home again. So whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination. It calls to you, harsh and exciting, like the wild geese, announcing your place in the family of things. Your place in the family of things. That's what we want a nice poetic description of those three connections.
And my poem is another, you'll hear them different way, a little slightly different metaphor as well. This poem's by another late American poet from more the other coast, William Stafford. And it's titled aptly, Being a Person. And he says, be a person here. Stand by the river. Invoke the owls. Invoke winter, then spring. Let any season that wants to come here and make its own call. After that sound goes away, wait. A slow bubble rises through the earth and begins to include the sky, stars, all space, even the outracing, expanding thought. Come back and hear the little sound again. Suddenly, this dream you're having matches everyone's dream, and the result is the world. If a different call came, there wouldn't be any world or you or the river or the owls calling. How you stand here is important. How you listen for the next thing to happen. How you breathe. How you stand here is important. How you listen for the next thing to happen. How you breathe. So again, we hear this really interesting dynamic between the dream, this field, the sky, the stars, space, and then that next breath, listening for the next thing to happen. And so here we're getting that rhythm of attention, right? Got to come back, got to expand, keep the dream, the call, the dream. So this is what we're going to be working with, especially this morning and then this afternoon, how that state begins to unfold into the steps. And that unfolding is quite different than left brain linear planning. So this idea,
or right brain, everything is now
all at
maybe
once, and yeah, there's
really an integration of those two.
this notion of emergence from a generative state. The next step emerges. It's not planned. It's not anticipated or projected. It emerges, and that's how we know what to do. That's why Erickson said, "I don't plan with my client. I don't know. I'm very curious what's possible, to discover what's possible now in this moment and then in this moment, because it may have not been possible 2 minutes ago, and now it is." And that's the interesting thing about being in the present. What's possible changes moment by moment.
So to have that high level of spontaneous creativity takes a lot of work. You hear, I've heard probably at least from 10 different places, the line ascribed, enlightenment is an accident, but practice makes you accident prone. Or creativity is an accident, but practice makes you accident prone.
Or as we say in success factor modeling, you got to be lucky to be successful, but the harder you work, the luckier you get.
Yeah.
The more you're prepared, the luckier you get. So we call this dynamic that we're speaking of disciplined flow. So again, you have that focused spaciousness, which allows you to have this idea of disciplined flow.
And so the people who are really the extraordinary performers practice more and have a deeper commitment to training than their peers. So it's easy, listening to what we're saying and say, "Oh man, we just trust the field, right? Jaw consciousness is going to guide us. I just feel what's in my center." We need to say it again and again. That's not what we're talking about. We're taking the two traditions or the two styles and doing the discipline and the commitment. What T.S. Eliot, the American poet who moved to London and had a very affected London accent, nonetheless said, "It is a condition of simplicity costing not less than everything."
Mm.
Condition of simplicity costing not less than everything.
Another way to mention that is Martha Graham, who said, it's one of the great founders of modern dance, especially modern expression.
She worked with Joseph Campbell.
Yeah.
Her main student, Martha Graham, was Joseph Campbell's, turned out to be Joseph
Campbell's wife. Yeah. So she says, there's a vitality, a life force, a quickening that is translated through you into action. And because there's only one you in all time, that expression is unique. And if you block it, it will never exist through any other medium and will be lost. The world won't have it. It's not yours to determine how good it is or how it compares with other expressions. It's your business to keep the channel open. And that's, I would say, that's one of the main things I'm doing as a generative coach is if that channel is open, something good is likely to happen.
This quote, which is one of those, on a lot of people's refrigerator door with the magnet, was actually a response to one of her students, Agnes B. DeMille. Yeah. Who was a well-known actress, and she was a student of Martha Graham's, and she said, "Teacher, how do you be the best? How do I be better than anybody else?" And that was her response.
It's not coming from the ego mind. It's coming from opening that soul, letting the soul energy out.
So in the step 3, we're just saying in the 4 modules, these are some of the different dimensions that we will be focusing on. So by the end of the 12 days, you should have a sense of the 3 positive connections, different ways to center, different ways to connect to resources, ways to identify and transform beliefs, ways to operate from multiple positions simultaneously, and then all these archetypal energies.
By the way, I think it's 16 days.
Oh, sorry.
Just,
Yeah,
that was my managerial mind. Wait a minute. But actually, one of the other simple ways of thinking about step 3 for me is resources, right? Where are resources? Where can I connect? Where are these different places we can connect to all of these resources? And in some ways, we're going to need multiple resources. And some of these will be, absolutely essential for some intentions. So we'll eventually cover ways to these portals, if we will, to all of them. But we're going to start here. Our kind of main prototype is the 3 positive connections. We see a little metaphor there. No one uses those things anymore. What's that?
Like us.
Yeah, like,
Will remembers those things, right?
All of the Generation Zs are going, what the heck is that for? So these are, we said these 3 positive connections. This one, this one, this one. The intention of the goal, the mind, body center, and this positive field of vision.
So this it allows you to feel what sometimes you hear musicians saying, it was a tight connection. And by tight connection, they're not talking about tight, but there was no sort of place where the connection was lost.
Yeah.
So not too tight, not too loose is how we say it, but it's getting these connections so that this deeper wholeness is there, because that's where the good stuff happens. And then, and here
this is our
beautiful
Antonio drawing,
illustrator, and Antonio Mesa,
who's illustrated both generative consulting and generative coaching. And if you have looked at those 2 books, you see how amazingly diverse his style can be.
and Creative Mind.
And Creative Mind, which is another whole,
Yeah,
I mean, that's
a
amazing.
whole different style.
So
there's me back in my olden days.
mhm.
So these 3 connections are, this exercise is on a timeline. I don't know if we'll do a timeline, but
we will be working with a timeline
this
afternoon, but this is kind of getting prepared to start moving on the timeline.
So here's what we'd like you to have from this morning is this sense of how to coach a client through this rhythm of 4 steps, which is, what is it to
Coach state,
coach feel? What is it
intent.
that you're committed to bringing into the world? Where's your deepest connection to yourself and to the world and your body? What are your family of resources that you need to be as part of your team, right? So you can teach clients this as a way to prepare for a particular event. They're going into a tough interview, or difficult conversation. This would be a preparatory thing. A coach, intention, center, resource. And then when you're coaching somebody, you say at any point where it feels like, the music stopped, there's a little bit of a stuck place, you can say, coach, intention, center, resources. And it really gives you a sort of an easy way to tune into where you need to do coaching at that moment.
And it's not always because, there's something traumatic. We could see it yesterday in the demo with Sukina, right? She has this nice, beautiful coach state. And as soon as she starts thinking of the intention, you're kind of losing that connection to myself. It's like,
that will happen the majority of the time.
So again, it sounds simple to say, but to keep an even rhythm of connection between all of these things, it's a challenge. But when you do, it's amazing. Again, that's where the magic flows. That's where, as Martha Graham says, that channel is open and your life force is coming out in these incredibly creative ways. So shall we do a demo?
Great. Yeah.
Who will be our
So I'm going to do the demo for the 3 connections, and Robert will do the timeline.
I'll do the demo this afternoon, but we need, who has a song for us?
So,
And do you have
what I'd like to demonstrate is usually at the beginning of the coaching session, person comes in and usually don't jump right into the work proper. There's sort of a little social chit chat and settle down. And then often I will ask informally, what would you like to set as a goal or an intention for this session? And typically people like to just have a little time just to talk about it. And then we say, can we tune into that a little bit more? And this now comes to the next phase of going through formally the steps. And then I think what I'd like to do, if it feels right for here, is once we have the 4 steps, to just put it into a musical rhythm. So that sense of coach, intention, center, resources, right? And just feel that as one song, so to speak. We've got to stop meeting like this. Was it the last?
It's a good habit.
Sorry?
It's a good habit.
It's a good habit. Good morning.
Good morning.
So how about that traffic out there? Some of those people not wearing masks, can you believe that? What about Boris
I
Johnson?
circumvented them and I walked through the park and it was beautiful.
Awesome. Awesome. So what do you think when you put your name in the hat? Say, God, if I get a spot, what I'd really like to be able to focus on would be.
I didn't have a focus other than to make the most of this very special time with you guys.
So what do you think if you're just talking from someplace in your heart or the back of your mind, say what would really be awesome to be able to shift in my life is to be able to.
The thing that really comes to mind is the thing that's very imminent.
Sorry?
The thing that is very imminent.
Yeah.
Rather than, well, it's 2 things. My father's funeral and the hideous family. Get that? I'm the only one with a hideous family.
Yeah. So your dad just died.
Yeah.
A couple of days ago.
Just a few days ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We touched base about this
Yeah.
briefly.
So there's sort of that, and it's also combined with, this is a big change in my life because he's been such a big part of my trying to help him. And it's taken up so much emotional space. And I feel that my own Martha Graham has been, I don't know where, she's been to the side.
Yeah.
So I know that this time of transition is honoring him, getting past the family and free of that toxicity and blocks. It's so interesting. You were talking about anything that's blocked. My sister won't speak to me. It's that kind of thing. And it's so, it has such a big effect on all of life when there are these disconnects. So in honoring my father and getting through that day with grace and presence and without,
Just in case.
might use the bucket as well.
Yeah. I don't need that. I need a whole fucking bucket.
So it's a transition into opening up my life again, that I can kind of see, but I might crumble as I am now on the way. And I don't want to do that. I want to find a way to ground myself and know that I'm enough and know that I can carry that day as a going through.
Great. Let's just pause. That's a lot.
It is a lot. Sorry.
No, I mean, your dad died.
Yeah.
Sorry. It's hard to be anything but a lot. So just like to suggest we just breathe with that for a few moments and welcome all the different parts of yourself, and beginnings, endings, new ways. So I think you could probably tell, I mean, again, inevitably, when somebody's coming to that place, there's so many different things, you know, how bad my family was, I want to go forward, I want to honor my dad. But I think we could safely say, if that was carried as the intention representation, it's too much, it's too bulky. So we want to make room for all the content and then see if we can connect to a single sense of what I really want to do with all of this is, and see if we can get like a 5-word statement. Again, that's not to brush away the details. It's to find a deeper connection that can allow you to move through all those details in some sort of a positive, creative way. You said there were 2 things. Was that both of them?
Yeah.
One was honor your dad's death, and the other was deal with.
Was to sort of go through into the future and make this as a new opening as well.
Yeah. So, you know, as the coach, I'm just feeling how that sits with me. It's a reference structure. That's a lot. You know, so I'm just sort of asking myself to just find a way to settle and to allow that to all be present, and also kind of have a channel for that coming through me. And do you have we might be standing there moving, who knows? Do you have a pocket?
I don't have a pocket, no.
That's the thing. Is there a clip on there?
Oh yeah, there is.
Can you clip it, or we have a Kamna? Can you help her?
Where I can
clip
clip it to. Yeah.
Oh, okay. It was your special psychic. Yeah. So now we'll go into those steps. I would say, you know, to explore that in some sort of creative, positive way, we're going to have a good grounded, open connection. That's what I mean by the coach field. So, what gets you there? I'll take you there. So what gets you to that place? At one with myself and have the sense of well-being in the world.
I'm going to steal from Canada. I walk my dog. I have a lockdown puppy.
A puppy?
Yeah, well, she's
They
a
were
year
hard
old
to
now.
get during lockdown, right? Yeah, that's
Um,
awesome.
so going out walking with her,
What's her name?
Gracie, as
Gracie.
in thank you, as in grazie.
What kind of dog is she?
She is a Hungarian Vizsla. She's
Wow.
fairly
How old
bonkers.
is she?
She's a year.
She's 1 year. Wow.
Mm.
Well, let's welcome Gracie. We're sincere about that.
Mhm.
We're going to have Steve, there's Jenny, and Gracie is part of the team here. Where would you sense her?
It's that I take her out. Before lockdown, I used to say I must go to the Heath today, and then didn't. And then since I got Gracie, I go every day. And I made the decision that I wouldn't just take her for an hour, I would go as long as I want. And so just being there, breathing, and just having space and time just to be.
Let's translate that from talking about it to connecting with it. Okay, Gracie girl, falling on you. Just breathe into that connection. When I had my office is in my home grounds, and when I had a busy practice, I worked with a lot of trauma survivors. And we had for 15 years a golden retriever, Lucky, would greet everybody at the door. And sometimes people, the trauma survivor would say, I've got a really big piece of work today. Can Lucky come in? And Lucky would come in and they would just put their hand on Lucky and they could trust Lucky far more than me, which makes sense. You know, I'm a human being. So if you just feel that connection with Gracie, even more basic than our conversation, more basic than what am I going to do with my family, more basic than how do I really deeply honor myself and my dad. Gracie has really allowed me to feel and connect something even more basic. Even more basic. And one of the nice things you can feel, as you know from music, Jenny writes a lot of music, a sense of feeling how it grounds you into the earth, opens you.
That's the other thing, is when the musicians are in my studio.
Yeah. Sorry.
When the musicians are in my studio.
When musicians are in your studio. Yeah.
There is just that connection and that music, and it's an unspoken trust.
Trust.
It's that not exactly thinking, it's just an awareness of that. The connection is just there.
Yeah. I'm
It's very alive.
really looking to feel the music. Be in that music with you. That's just a nice way of saying, stop thinking so much and feel. That's one of the main coaching suggestions we give, is we usually are blah, 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 blah. One to 10 scale, music, Gracie, trust. What's the number on the 1 to 10 scale?
Yeah, that feels good. I feel, I'm not good at the numbers, but maybe an 8 or something. I can feel space here.
Awesome.
And a connection in my heart.
So notice that as Jenny's brought into the conversation two really important anchors or resources, connection with Gracie, connection in her studio with the musician. Okay, that's coming from her. And so now as the coach, you're tracking, and we expect that at different times, she'll get a little bit disconnected or overwhelmed. And right at those places, Gracie, music, trust, studio. That's where we're looking to keep replenishing the fire, the soul fire. You're nodding your head. What do you notice as I say that?
I'm just noticing that my goal, which is kind of forming, is this.
Oh.
To be able to,
So you see, out of that, it becomes more spontaneous and clear. This is what I want. This is what I'm needing. And what would be the words for that? So she introduced the intention step here, you know, this, not me. But out of that, I just start noticing, if you make that somatic movement and then say, what I really want to be able to do.
I want to be able to move forward through this time with grace and calmness and acceptance and generosity. I think that's too many words, but that's kind of just to be able to hold my space like that.
Hold my space.
With acceptance.
Hold my space. We come back to Gracie girl. I need the connection. I'm a musician. I know that feeling of trust. I've got to get back to where I belong. From there, to hold the space. So I go through this big transformation. My dad, my family. Hold the space. And Jenny, just like feeling the music underneath your verbal mind. Find that. I gotta find the connection. From there, I want to see what sort of somatic movement.
I want to also, I've been very bad in my life at allowing support.
Support.
I'm like, no, it's okay.
Yeah, I'm okay.
They're just making it up.
Yeah. That's fine.
But I actually, there are people who support me.
So she's start going into the resource stuff right there. Then I realize that I'm like, you don't need anybody. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
And that's what the coach state is allowing, is that it starts coming from your deeper intelligence. So just notice as you do that, who, I don't know what music is there.
Musicians, friends, some people in this room. And ones that I don't know about.
Yeah.
Who are there, but I know they're there.
Listen to the music. Listen to the music all the time.
There is Mozart.
You notice she touches a sad child state there. Keep the movement. Hold the space. Sad with the breath. Music. trust in the musical studio. So life through death, back into life.
I don't know what to do with this hand because this is something to do with the toxic family. And so I've got support here. And I'm not sure what to do with
Let's just ask your body.
them.
We don't want to ask your purple mind.
No.
She doesn't know what the hell. That's crazy. Confusing. Isn't that amazing? So, to reach back. Something else on the other side. Keep the rhythm. Keep the beat. And the melody. Keep the bass. Rhythm. Repetition. Rest. Heal. Honoring life. Honoring death. And you notice she now adds her sentence. Sometimes the coach is leading, sometimes the client, but when things are going well, more leading is done by the client than the coach. So every little thing that it was introduced in the coaching conversation was coming from Jenny. I was asking a question, inviting her to do things, and then something inside of her. See, she's doing some sort of integration. So I connect to my heart, belly, feel the trust in the music, in the community. Your dad,
And trust myself.
sorry,
Trust myself.
trust yourself.
Mm.
Ways to hold the space for you. Dad spirit. Whole family. When you're younger, probably thought, I have to do something. I have to understand that change. Just hold the space. Hold the space. Listen to the music. Conversations with Gracie. People, some in this room. It's a different family. You're in that. We always carry original family. Part so many other families. We don't have to do it by ourselves. I hope you can see these 4 steps. We informally identified a goal or an area. Jenny wanted to make some shift. Let's start with Coach Field. She had 2 reference structures. Let's set the intention. She went through it and then she came out and to hold the space. It's generally, I've found over the years, really good if you have 5 words or less for the key statement. Lots of different content. in that sense of who's part of my community. So Jenny did that spontaneously, and there's something over here. And then she said, she spontaneously said, to do all that, I need to have this as my primary. That's the setup. If we have a reasonable confidence that if we can nurture those four connections, whatever comes up will be in good hands. The natural intelligence and wisdom of the ancestors. That's what allows you to reconnect with your deeper wisdom and your deeper community. And then everything else is sort of, well, that's interesting. Okay, if we stop here.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Beautiful work.
Before you take that off, anything that you want to share, as what was meaningful, important, what kind of, what stands out to you as your takeaway from that session?
The coming back to simplicity,
Coming back to simplicity.
going from the overwhelming everything that I'm trying to deal with, and that was only a quarter of the list.
Yeah.
Just coming back to what is actually I can do.
Yeah. Thinking of that poem from this morning where he says, yeah, there's the outracing, expanding thought, and then come back, come back to hear the little sound again, and that the way you breathe is important. The way you listen, the way that you stand. So, yeah.
Yeah.
And I just also want to point out how, those things we were saying yesterday, you see how Steve and Jenny, getting into that place where, every word has resonance. And that when Jenny said, I can trust myself, people say that, you've heard that 1,000 times, I trust myself. Yeah, I trust myself. But in that place, then that really means I trust myself. It's not the same as saying it in some other way. So you see, that's the kind of space we're creating in the generative coaching field, is that those words have magic, they have power. And I thought that was really, really beautiful.
No, thank you for pointing that out, because I will remember that more. Thank you both.
What's this? What's this? What's this? What's this? Those are like the 4 questions. We're trying to get it into somatic rhythm that connects it to the collective intelligence that begins to activate a deeper wisdom.
And you could see that again, it's remember we were talking about earlier, that rhythm of connection, right? If I just get on this one and I get too stuck on that one, the generativity, it's going to start to actually drain the energy. Then it's going into the whole rather than the whole, as you were saying. So I need to keep that rhythm. Now it doesn't, as we saw in Jenny's case, it may not go that way. Maybe sometimes it goes this way. So, but it's whatever that rhythm is. And then, as Stephen was pointing out, that then, as Martha Graham says, the channel is open and it just comes through. The solutions, the answers, the possibilities. And you can see, in terms of what Stephen was doing, remember I was saying yesterday, it's not a lot of work. You're kind of going, oh, yeah. So then everything is in that flow. And that's the kind of place that you're looking for in this rhythm between you as a coach and the coachee. So getting those 4 things, starting with coach, and then the 3 connections: intention, center, resource.
And so I gave her just some very simple coaching a couple of times. Stop thinking, get down into the rhythm.
Yeah.
So
Feel
she
the
was
rhythm.
saying, afterwards, simplicity was one of the most important learning. Something that really just pedagogically but impress upon clients. When you're facing a big challenge, you have to stay simple. You have to stay simple. Yet the more complicated you get with a big challenge, the more overwhelmed you will be and the more defeated you will be. Again, that doesn't mean there's not all these details that you don't need to track, but the core connection is center, intention, field. And that allows the beat and the breath and the flow that's coming through it. As soon as you go up here, you're going to get your butt kicked. We're just trying to impress that upon people. Get down, extend out, open up to a community.
You meet complexity with complexity, it gets complicated. If you meet that same complexity with that simplicity, then you're able to actually ground it and turn it into something that becomes an actual path to something productive. So I think that's that. And I think also you know that with music as well. That's right. So want to do find a partner, break, and then we'll go both ways. And
okay, how many of you folks are back? There's Daniel all the way in Martinique. Yes.
Still, hi Steve, hi Robert.
So we have now an open floor to any conversation, anything you'd like to share, any questions?
So you've gone now, you've had a chance to sort of walk through the first 3 steps and see how they build on each other. And in fact, those first 3 steps, that coach stage is what allows you to get to that center. Step 2, you get that intention. And then step 3, you're putting those together with the resources. Yes. And please stand and.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Anya. So in this exercise, which was quite very powerful for both of us, we just the mirroring exercise was very powerful, taking it to the deeper level. What I found, and this might be quite funny, at the end of my exercise being the coachee, the immediate thing that started showing up was the action.
Yes.
So like from this exercise, going through steps 1, 2, 3, at the end of it, I identified my action and the immediate thing that I need to do. So am I ahead of the game?
Well,
I'm just rushing through the exercise, but because that came natural.
yeah, no, I think you see why we have these. There's a very organic reason that we put them in that sequence. So what she's saying is that when I get these 3 connections, when I actually have all 3 of them, what happens next is I'm ready to go, right? And the steps start coming spontaneously, naturally. I don't have to think, now what step am I going to take? It starts to unfold. So that's the magic of those 3 connections. And yes, you're naturally going to, which is now that's the.
And from this exercise, like knowing myself being typically, okay. So the nature of the action that I have identified after going through step 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
So being the action person that naturally I would be kind of always jump into action. This time, after going through this exercise, the action I identified that came to me had a different flavor, had this calm flavor. And, you know, the conversation I identified, oh, I actually need to set the scene for this conversation instead of being this, okay, let's have a 5-minute conversation while you're driving somewhere and I'm doing something.
Right.
It was like, actually, no, let's honor that space. It's an important conversation. Let's create that space and then have it and bring the intention fully. So
Exactly.
That's it, sister.
You got it, Anna.
And you know, one of the things that often discover, we're talking about the step 2 intention. And you hear it, I think it's natural in any conversation. What a person says is their representation of their intention will often change at least somewhat. They say, well, and then they talk a little bit more and then say, well, that's not quite it. And you heard that in Jenny a little bit. often you'll start with what we might call an ego goal. I want to be rich and famous and have everybody like me. And then as somebody starts getting into this deeper connection, it's like, wait a minute, that's not it. I want to connect, or I want to be seen, or I want to, so forth. So the nature of your whole thinking changes significantly as your state changes.
Yeah, so you're getting more than one part. So it's kind of like I was giving that example yesterday, where the person said, I want to make a bunch of money. And I said, what's that going to do for you? Then I'll feel secure. So what my ego wants is this, but what my soul wants is what that's going to bring me. And that coach state sort of allows you to align those things. And you were showing, it was actually really interesting when you were showing all the crash that was going, oh, let's set the meeting. Okay, yeah. Versus let's create the space where we can actually have.
This is, what we call your ego performance cell. And it's good about like doing these things. Oh, let's talk, or let's do this. And you find where people are coming in around coaching is that part of them, their intellect is not getting the job done. They're like, okay, well, let me think, or let me do this, let me do this. It will be a completely different type of thinking that says first, and again, if you look at performance art, so if you look at musicians, if you were playing music from the state, hey, let's jam, baby.
By the way, Steve, the people on the Zoom can't see you down here, so
okay.
you might want to come
Sorry.
back.
Let's play music together. Let's be creative. It's silly, right? You realize, or you see athletes, I think one of the interesting things for those of us who like to watch sports is you get to these places where any small difference is going to be the difference between winning or losing. And as things go to that place, the stress starts to mount, and you see a lot of the players shirk or fall apart at that. And then there are those stars who they just kind of come out, and they're them playing from a different level. So we could see it, or you see like for like a basketball, they come up and they've got a big shot, and I can usually feel whether that shot is going to go in before it's it, because you could see in just their form and just their state. Make sense? It's this whole mind body field harmony that they're in, that allows whatever they're doing to really come from this deeper and I think more intelligent level. So the sort of questions that we're facing in coaching are usually not memorization questions, or they're not about what's the routine. It's like, how do I as a human being meet this? Like, so for Jenny's, challenge that she brought up, so my God, my dad just died. The family is always a little crazy. So how am I going to deal with that? And that's what we're saying. Fundamentally, your intellect cannot meet those challenges. It's just, you can't meet them from an isolated verbal mind.
Yeah. So what was my question? No, my question, Steve and Robert, tell me more about limbic resonance.
Well, the limbic system, limbic actually means it's like a tree overhanging, branches overhanging. It's part of the old animal brain. And the whole function of that part of the brain is a sense of belonging. Sometimes they say it's emotion, but that's way too individually isolated. But this feeling, do I belong? And you see with non-human mammals, that's what they're sorting by. That's why we love our pets so much. The feeling, how do we feel this sense of a we-ness, or as Robert says, me, we, to us. That's the part of the brain that the language of the limbic brain is resonance. That's and to me, that's the primary language that we're using in the work. So I'm sort of, you're listening as a musician, you're listening to when you can you can feel the resonance in your body to the beat. Robbie's a drummer, right? Or a singer. And you feel once that's there, it's like something quiets down and opens up, and then you can play. So same thing with another human being. If you want to communicate effectively, the verbal mind is always secondary. That, you know, the ego thinks it's the most important game in town, but it's not. It's like, do we feel this human connection? So that's when we get that resonance, then the mind is no longer here or there. The mind is here.
So that's what that little diagram there is showing. The little circle is the content, and that's sort of the ego conversation. But the big circle is you could say a big part of that is bigger circle. It's the field that's holding it. It's where the limbic resonance is, and that determines, okay, what kind of meaning is going to be given to that little circle. So again, as a coach, as a generative coach, we're always tracking both of those levels. But the size of the circle also shows where we give the attention to. Yeah, I want to give attention to the content, but I want to give more attention to that bigger circle. So that limbic resonance, that quality of connection and context. I was thinking from a performance standpoint, Steve was talking about, you know, sports and music, and as a runner, not a professional runner, but somebody who runs a lot, I'm always interested in the the Olympics, and the person who's won, who's been the fastest man in the world for like the past several Olympics in the 100 and 200 yard dash has a great name, of course, Usain Bolt. But what I love to watch him run, because when he runs, it's just like, and the guys are chasing him are like, and he's just like, oh, someone near me? Oh, and they ask him at the end, they go, wow, what were you thinking?
The world record.
Yeah, the world record. What were you thinking? What were you doing? His answer was, I was just trying to relax. And you're going, wait a minute, you're going to run, 200 meters faster than any other human being, and you're relaxing. Yeah, why would I want to waste energy? So that's that interesting thing. If I want to go faster, I got to relax. And that's where that's the sort of the paradox we're saying. It's that. So the relaxation is holding this intense performance. And I think that's what you're saying about that. Set that bigger circle before you have the little circle conversation. And then that little circle conversation will be magic.
So muscle tension and breathing inhibition is what disconnects those two levels.
Exactly.
The little circle, which is what your conscious mind is doing, from the big circle, which is everything else of life, that you want to be connected to it and feeding it. And it gives you your next step and your next step. So that borderline between the little circle and the big circle, that's where the game is won or lost.
Exactly.
So coach state means that there's an open border. There's a flow between the figure and the ground. A crash state means that you get caught inside the box. And so nothing gets in, nothing gets out.
Kind of what happens in a crash state is that bigger circle shrinks, and then all you have is the little circle. And then sometimes you don't even have much of the little circle, right? It gets smaller. And so again, the channel is closing in Martha Graham's words.
So let's imagine a little, thought experiment where you look in front of you and there's two doors, coach and crash. And you go up to the crash state and you walk in that door, and the only thing that's in there is a traumatic experience or some sort of demonic monster that tells you you're shit or you're not safe. And you think, and you slam the door, you barely get out. Oh man, I'm never gonna do that. Then you go to the other door and you walk in, and there's that same demon there. But it's got 11 or 12 people that are moving, dancing, hugging. Same experience, right? Will you have a different meaning, a different connection, a different outcome? Of course you will. People know that intuitively. that's a practical way of talking about the difference between coach and crash. The crash isolates you. So whatever experiencing you're in, you feel trapped in it, defined by it. And in a lot of ways, like you're in trauma, time disappears. You figure, this is who I am, this is how I've always been, this is how I always will be. And that's overwhelming.
So frustration becomes despair, because it's like, it's always been like this, it will always be like this, it will never change. And
you can never trust these kind of people. We see that a lot in intimacy relationship. I used to work with trauma survivors and couples. Some say, what's the difference?
Therapy. I can tell you that.
And what you'll see in your intimacy relationships is going into what Werner Erhard, the guy that developed EST, used to call your already always form of listening. I already know what you're going to say. You always say this. You're always this way. I already know it. So before, and you see this, and you see it especially today in any sort of social conversation. Person gets 3 words out of their mouth and say, "Oh, well, you are just a fucking asshole idiot.
You liberal.
You fucking no, you're."
I know. Oh, that's
You're a white
the
male.
deep state, far left.
You think you're above
Of course,
it all,
you'd
don't
say
you?
that.
Look at him. He thinks he's above it all.
So we have a principle here, the key principle, which, by the way, is worth 50% of your final grade. So listen up. That is, there's no experience when you go through either of those doors is either it's either good or bad, problem or not. The thing that will make it one way or the other is, anyone have a guess? Your relationship with it.
You're the difference that makes the difference.
If you treat it as an enemy, it will be your enemy. If you treat it as an advisor, it will be your advisor. If you treat it as a learning experience, it will be a learning experience. So the way that and this is this is the whole Aikido metaphor, right? The way I meet whatever is coming to me will determine how it affects me.
To have that open relationship, you have to be in an intelligent, creative state. So it's like, oh man, just how I'm open to anything. You're going to get whacked and knocked down and really hurt. So that's why we focus on these first steps. Get in a place where you're connected to the earth, you're open to the ancestors, you're clear on what your values are, you're feeling things moving through your mind, body. Then you can be open and vulnerable to difficult things. So we're saying don't open unless you feel safe. So we're saying we open to the enemy or to the difficulty only in a way that we can stay in a safe relationship with ourselves. So that's what we're saying. To be safe doesn't mean this. I mean, if you really look at it practically, to be safe doesn't mean we hide. Hiding actually makes us less safe.
Yeah.
I know they used to do these studies on muggers, people like purse snatchers, and they would show them videos of people walking on the street, and they would say, "Who would be your victim?" And there was remarkable agreement. That one. What did they see that said, "Oh, this one would be," and the person would be disconnected. They're either la 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 or on their cell phone, which is everybody these days, or somebody who's just locked down. That would be the victim.
But by the way, that's why people don't carry money anymore these days, because they would all be stolen. So I have to have it on my phone.
So anybody from
Any
from the
comments,
virtual
questions, anything to share from our Zoom?
Hi, it's Angie.
Hi,
I
James.
just wondered if you could say a little bit more about sort of not opening the crash door if you don't feel safe, and the difference between that and hiding. Also to say, I study Aikido as well, so Aikido metaphors are very useful. So thank you.
Yeah, so we're really studying what is it to be safely vulnerable.
Mhm.
And, you know, in Aikido, one of the sort of practical questions is where do your eyes go?
Mhm.
Or what is your first focus of attention? As children, our first focus of attention is other people. And we say to, you know, there's a, you know, Erickson used to say the values of of these key terms change over the years. So let's take the phrase to come into the world. For a child to come into the world usually means I have to go through other people. I have to get your permission and your guidance to come into the world. So if coming into the world means first going to you, and you're there, I've learned that, you know, if I really ask for what I want, then I'm going to get whacked. And so it's like, okay, I don't want to come into the world. So you make other people your center when you're in an unsafe place. So you feel it, you see it, and that's your first attention. So from Aikido and all of its many cousins, the first attention is your center.
Mm.
So your mind is coming into the world through in this way. Right. So that's why we're saying, what's your value? Where do you feel it first in yourself? And in order to come into the world, you don't abandon your soul. You don't give up your connection to yourself. And that's a practical thing that you can coach people on. Don't give your first attention to other people.
In fact, maybe I'd like to answer your question with a somatic model. So let's say I'm the crash state behind door number 2. Steve opens the door and I come at him like that. Do you think he's ready for it?
I've given my mind away. I've given myself away. And again, you have to be very compassionate. So it's like, what else? I couldn't even think of any other possibility. It was just so sort of overwhelming.
So in that case, I'm his demon, right? Now, I'm going to do the same thing. But let's say now he's coming through the coach door.
Oh, that's boring. And you know, this is really the safest place. You can make connections, but what's he going to do, right? Over there, that's uncomfortable. Where do you feel that? Where do you feel this?
Let's continue at the break. Lower. We are from San Francisco. Okay.
San Francisco boys. Yeah, so.
No, but I don't know, Jane, you see that difference. So I'm the crash behind the door in a way, but how that is met is now again, if Steve tries to hide from it, right now he's really in trouble. So
it's where's your first attention? In Aikido, there's a term called ma'ai, which is what is your optimal distance, which means I can feel you, but I'm far enough away where I can still stay safe within myself. And then what's your angle of connection here? So we're not looking at this as a centered state.
mm,
You're too exposed here. You know, so we want to feel I'm connected here, I open to you, but I don't feel that you have more access to me than I have to myself.
Sorry, Steve, I can't. I can only see one arm. It's very encouraging, but yeah.
So it's the difference between this and this.
Sorry. Where are you right now?
I'm in I'm at home in my youngest's bedroom, which has now become my office, just north of London,
Okay.
in a
Great.
garden city. So I'm very fortunate.
Great, good.
Great.
Well,
Well,
so that, you know, to say these are not just sort of distinction-free states,
No,
you know,
no.
any more than if you were playing music, if you were doing any sort of creative performance, there's really a lot of training to be in that sweet spot.
And that's, by the way, why if you're doing that first step and you're asking somebody, you know, find one of these states where you really felt that connection to yourself. And if the person actually did do something like this, I probably wouldn't just go, oh, that's it. I'd say, oh, I'm wondering, you know, is there a time when you've been able to, yeah, be a little bit more grounded? Again, that's where all those coach distinctions do make a difference. It's, as we said, it's not some kind of a rigid thing, but they provide me at least these checkpoints, because sometimes I'll see that, you know, somebody's really centered, but they're not necessarily open, or somebody's open, but they're not centered, or they're not aware, you know. So that's why we have those distinctions. And even if I don't to the person, those are, as a coach, those are the you know, sort of the dimensions that I'm constantly attuning to.
So just as another example, working with people who really have difficulty establishing boundaries, or to open up means I give myself away. There's this two-part statement, there's different variations, which is, I open my love to you, but if you fuck with me, I'll kill you. I fucking take you out. You know, I open my love to you. If you fuck with me, I'll kill you. Nothing personal. You know, so that takes a lot in terms of claiming I have the right, I have the need to protect this precious life that has been given to me. You know, is that that's my first commitment, is to care for this life that has been given to me. So to do that, I need to open and be vulnerable, but I need to also realize I have the need and the commitment to fiercely protect this life. Don't fuck with me.
So, you know, Martha Graham, I think it's interesting what she's saying too, right? I'm opening the channel so that my life force can come out, not so that somebody else can come in and take it. And I think that's that interesting, again, always that interesting balance.
So the meeting point usually then is not inside of your body. It's you're extending your chi, your ki. The meeting point is between you.
Mm.
You know, so you want to feel if where I feel you and me touching is inside my body, I'm going to feel overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to extend myself. So I feel we meet in between. Mm-hmm. And this space is around me. And that comes from an extension, not this. This doesn't get it. You know, this is what opens. Let's meet, but let's meet in between.
So that idea of ma'ai, I think, is so important. And for me as a coach, that's one of the things I'm constantly thinking of too. It's like, we're both from California. So like, you know, we hug trees there, you know, so we're like very touchy. But there'll be it's like if somebody's kind of in a really vulnerable state, I won't necessarily reach out and touch them, but I might actually hold a space like that. So like that's the proper space. Then maybe later you can come in and be more close. So that's really interesting. It's a sort of this really interesting.
It's always a balance.
Where
you need to penetrate through the defenses, but you need to really respect and honor the vulnerable connection. It's a sweet spot.
A little bit later, we'll be going over the whole notion of like a second skin. And so for me, before I would meet somebody physically, there's always kind of meeting through the second skin, which is my presence goes beyond my physical skin. And sometimes you can take up a lot of space, sometimes less space. And so it becomes a really interesting part of the dance of where do I begin to feel energetically that sense of either connection or, either resonance, dissonance. I think that becomes another really key skill, which we
Let's
will
see.
go into when we get
Let's
back
see.
from, go more into
We'll
this.
extend our state this way.
So we'll be back at
2:35.
2:35.
90 minutes.
And we will be going into step 4. So as Anna was saying, step 4 sort of naturally begins to come, and that's where we go.
And so we need to have people keeping some sort of documents like a diary so that we have a sense of saying, well, here's what we plan to do, what you talked about doing, here's what actually happened. How can we be able to join with that and revise accordingly?
I think an important principle here is that learning and wisdom do not come from experience alone. There's a lot of people who have a lot of experiences and haven't learned anything. Learning and wisdom come from thoughtful reflection on experience. So it's that adding that reflective aspect on the experience there where we're going to actually learn the most, take away the most.
In the therapy outcome research of 70 years, and this particular piece, I'm absolutely sure is 100% applicable to coaching. It's sort of interesting. I mean, now the American Psychological Association, I think, recognizes over 550 distinct therapeutic modalities. When you test those in terms of outcome, there's really no difference between the different modalities, which is a little shocking to the practitioners because we know our approach is superior, but it's not. They work basically that the coaching and therapy work about 60% of the time, which is it's significantly better than a baseline if you have no treatment at all. When what you see is that really makes difference is there are certain practitioners of any particular approach that consistently get superior outcomes. And so now you can look at what are these people who are getting better than 60% consistently, what are they doing differently? And the first thing on the list is they get more feedback. They're saying, does this fit for you? What is it that you want? Tell me what happened. And so everything's being adapted based on feedback. Second thing, interestingly, is that highly successful practitioners admit their failures more readily than other people. So they say, I messed up again, or that didn't work. I acknowledge that. Let's use that as the basis for being able to get on a better path. And third, which actually turns out to be the most significant, is when the coach or the therapist is living the method that they're bringing to the clients with some sort of passion in their own life. So they're not just bureaucratically applying it. They're saying, this is really, I'm involved in it myself. I'm living my life as a journey. And as you can imagine, that becomes very infectious. They say, wow, this person's really sort of offered me something that they're walking the walk and talking the talk. But the first thing is always feedback. And you're adjusting. So you just assume that almost everything, every technique that you use will not turn out the way that you anticipated. Isn't that great to know? And the point is not to have your technique succeed. Your point is to put things into play and get feedback. And it's the feedback from the client's own process. That's the most important technical information.
So sort of paraphrase Gandhi, you want to be the change that you want to see in the world. And I think that
We see a California therapist, somatic therapist.
And again, this idea that I know for me, I'm always my first client, especially in coaching. And if something doesn't, work for me and I don't use it for myself, I'm not very likely to try it with somebody else. Remember Richard Bandler, one of the founders of NLP, actually one time said, if it doesn't work on Robert, it won't work on anybody. So,
And one of the sadder things is Bandler said, I don't know why. He says, everybody that I use this with, it works for them, but not for me.
Yeah.
Put
So-
those two next to each other.
Yeah. So again, what we're saying is this is where we're bringing it to life. And so timeline,
Who's that guy? He's so young and
way
youthful.
younger.
He's got a lot more hair.
Well, yeah, and a lot less of other things. So this idea of a timeline where the past is behind us, the future is in front of us, and we're sort of walking into the future. That's a somatic timeline. Other times of internal timelines, the future might be to one side and the past to the other. But when you're actually walking a timeline, when you're in it, generally the future is in front of you, the past is behind you. And kind of the basic prototype we use to build the storyboard on that timeline is the Disney process of what he called Imagineering, which is a combination of imagination and engineering. So you get dreamer, realist sort of put together in one term. And this is a little quote from the Strategies of Genius book, where I wrote about Disney, from one of the people that worked with him for a long time, who said, there were actually 3 different Disneys, the dreamer, the realist, and he said the spoiler, we say the critic. And he said, you never knew which one was coming to your meeting. But actually, having looked at what Disney did, that's not really the case, because he was actually pretty clear about these different, and he wasn't like a multiple personality. These would actually be what we would call different mindsets, just like we're
Three different dimensions,
Yeah.
or you could think of them chronologically. You start with the dreamer phase.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, how does that actually work in action? And then the critic, we really want to emphasize for a lot of people, they think of the critic as the negative critic, but we're thinking of the positive critic as the difference between an okay job and an exceptional job. Editing, criticism, we can improve, we can do this better. That's what we mean by critic, a positive, a part of the system that really supports the dream, that really wants it to work and is always realizing we can do better, we can do better, we can do better.
So kind of as it says here, the dreamer mindset is imagining what's possible. That's that reaching out into that quantum, field of possibility. The realist is planning how to reach the goal. That's when we start moving into this step 4. And that's often why step 4 leads to step 5, which is the obstacles, is that you're going to start to find what are the missing pieces, what doesn't work so well, what does not fit the key values that we're trying to accomplish. So that's where, one of the things we would say is the reason that people generally don't like critic is because so often critic goes hand in hand with crash. So I go into this crash state, and I think that's, because if you ask people, show me your somatic model of a critic, actually do that. What would be your somatic model of a critic?
It's usually something like that. And I think you're saying that, talking about how easy it is to shift from just do it for the dream, for opening, to don't make mistakes, or what Joseph Chilton Pearce called the error correction error, where your primary attention is in something's not right or something has to be fixed, rather than something's trying to be created. And it's not just semantics, it's a fundamentally different level.
It's a mindset. Yeah, it's not just a mindset. So as you can see, we're saying that these are the 3 fundamental elements of any effective creative process. I like to point out that, a dreamer without a realist and a critic never never anything more than a dreamer. Stay a dreamer. A realist without a dreamer and a critic is like a robot. We just execute. A critic without a dreamer and a realist is a spoiler or a killer. And a dreamer and a realist, okay, they're good at making prototypes, right? They're sort of a research and development group, but they never get beyond that. A realist and a critic make a good bureaucracy, right? And a dreamer and a critic are good for bipolar, manic depression. So you're really looking for for all of these, and in fact, you can kind of tell, as kind of given what I was saying, I can kind of assess clients, based on which of these mindsets or combination of these mindsets are they either stuck in or that's missing. So again, you get somebody that doesn't have much realist, and they're like, "Oh, everything's great. Oh,
I know it will work. This is going to change everything." So like the 3 positive connections, this is a way of sort of sensing, because remember, we're thinking of creativity as a balance. It's always a balance between different opposites. So you're saying, okay, does she have the dreamer? Does she have the like the vision, the sense of something big that wants to be created? Or does she have this sort of the reality-based details? Does she have a way to keep reorganizing, keep improving, criticize, recognize, no, that's not working very well? And it's not that hard, I think, once you have these 3 to be able to sense where the weakness is, or the underdeveloped or underrepresented parts of my client's mapping.
And again, each one is susceptible to that range between coach and crash. But so the crash dreamer is interesting, because that's usually the ungrounded one, that it's the open without the centered or the connected,
or the manic phase.
And you can
We
see
had somebody, he said, "What's going on?" He says, "I've got this new dream. I want to create an airline company." And it's like, this guy had no experience with airlines whatsoever. To say, "Is that a metaphor?" He says, "No, it's real." It's not that we're pessimistic, but we have enough of realists to say the chances of this guy in the next 2 months creating a successful airline, I don't think we, chunked down a little bit.
Well, this is also where, by the way, timelines come in, because I say, yeah, I mean, if you have forever, anything is possible. Next week limits things a little bit, so depends also on that time horizon that you're looking at. But then, on the realist level, you also get this kind of, what the 2 types of crash and realist. One Steve was showing earlier of, I'm going to get this done. Right. The other is just this kind of, up in the head robotic.
This is the way it happened.
And then obviously we're all aware of the sort of challenges of the crashed critic, which is, this is no good, it's not going to work, what do you think you're doing?
You're an idiot, you're worthless.
So we want to make sure that all of these are coming through the coach state. And you might notice we have this sort of penchant for trinities. So step 2 is the 3 positive, the 3 representations. Step 3 is the 3 positive connections. Here is this dreamer, realist, critic. And so, but I think that's because we're saying that you kind of need these balance each other in each one of these steps. You've got to have those kinds of balances. So, so this idea of a storyboard, this is a literal storyboard example from what Disney would make, where you see it's not the final product. It's not a dream. It's not the final product. It's this kind of thing that's in between. Kind of like when I was first in college, I was studying architectural drawing. I actually worked in an architectural firm for a while. And so you have this dream of a building, and then you've got to map it, right? You start making the architectural drawings. And the drawing is no longer just the picture. You're trying to map out, well, what is this going to look like? How does it fit into its environment? And so it's giving you that sense of, what is that going to look like? And then of course you've got to get into what's the story of its, of its unfolding. I mean, actually, to me, the PowerPoints that we use here are another example of a storyboard. So Stephen and I, when we're planning the program like this, and we'll often, in the morning or in the evening, we're going, what's our storyboard for the day? Which of these slides are we going to put together? So now,
and by the way, the creativity research really clearly shows that people who are really creative have the whole vision but they also have this chunking capacity.
Yeah.
Or people like Csikszentmihalyi, who
Yeah.
just died
Oh, did he?
like 2 days ago, I think. We call him Dr. Flo. Csikszentmihalyi is very hard to pronounce, but he was the guy.
Not a non-flowing name. That's why I had to study.
Yeah, that's right.
I got to say my name.
Well, he actually developed the whole concept of flow right after World War II. He was in Hungary as a young child, and it was a total rubble. You know, it was just a horrible place. But he said, as a young child, he couldn't help but notice there were few people walking around in a state of well-being, and he said everybody else was like a zombie, and he was so attracted to that. Even under these conditions, that these folks could be walking around with a state of well-being. What state are they in? And that's where he coined the term flow, and he studied it for 30 years. And you say that a flow, to get in the flow state, you have to have the centered state, you have to have a positive intention, you have to have a vision, and then you have to have a series of chunkable steps, testable steps along the way. So you could hear again these paradoxical qualities in every map of creativity.
And so what we're going to be exploring here is what is one of the fundamental prototypes that we use for storyboarding. So storyboard it's going to be, you're kind of defining this crucial path. You know, what are the key steps that are going to take me from my present state to that intention that I want to, create. And here's where you've got to start putting it into context. So here's where it becomes really important to say, well, instead of just, I want to have a better connection with myself, I want to feel well-being and financially safe and stable. Then we got to go, well, by when and in which context? So if somebody says, I want to have a sense of security, we say, where would you most like to have that? Because now we're going to start really targeting specific actions. And you cannot take action abstractly. It's got to be, a particular context within a particular time frame, and including other actors. I mean, that's part of the idea of the story.
So if the work that Jenny and I were doing this morning, you say, a next session, if we were doing a piece of work, might be, okay, so you really have this commitment to hold the space for yourself and for your family going through this process. What specifically do you think that might look like? What are the different points on this path? Are we talking about going to the wake, talking with the family, being at the funeral, and so forth? And now you're chunking in a very different way, and your language is very, very different. So the reality that you're creating will consequently be fundamentally different.
And I think, Anna, it's like you were saying, you were talking about this, the one way of planning, planning and another way. And here, this is like this unfolding aspect. So I want to have this important conversation, and I want to create the space for that conversation. So we would be in the next part of that coaching session saying, okay, let's start laying that out, which is rather than let's talk about it and then write down the steps, we would actually start walking that storyboard. And so a kind of a common way we would do this, you set your intention, which is this possibility. And then we kind of focus on, okay, what is that going to be like? So let's say you have a success with that. So again, we want to look for, how is that going to play out in this context that you'd like to have it? Then we start mapping the steps, and there's two ways to map the steps. One is going from the present state to the desired state, and the other what is known as reverse planning, which you go, okay, well, what to get there, from this success, instead of kind of going back to the present, going, oh, how do I get there from here? I can kind of come backwards. Well, what did I do just before that? What did I do before that? What did I do before that? What did I do before that? So here, I'm going to keep going. You go over the edge. So now this would be a kind of example of two of the parts of the storyboard. A verbal part, which is simple words, Right? So, and you see they're action-oriented words. You know, they're not a lot of abstract words. It's get this, do that, open that, transform that. And then you have an image. And you see they're kind of metaphorical, mostly images or symbolic images. But then we want to add to that a somatic model. So show me with your body what that step would be like. Show me with a gesture, with a movement. So now, and what you'll see once you get those laid out, you can actually walk that story, and then you feel the story, it unfolds. So now we won't, sometimes it's not about rigidly doing one thing or another. Sometimes we might even say, I might even have to start in the middle and say, okay, here's the beginning, here's the end, what would happen in the middle? And now what would happen before that? What would happen after that? So that's a whole aspect of what we would call chunking. And chunking is something that was studied, and I guess the term was probably even mostly proposed by
George
Miller.
Miller, yeah.
He started looking at, first of all, how people remember things. And he's the one that noted that famous idea that it typically is easy to remember 7 plus or minus 2 things. 5 things, most people could remember all 5. 10 things, people start to forget 1 or 2, sometimes 3.
And by the way, those of you who are NLP students, George Miller was one of John Grinder's main influences.
Now, but here's the interesting thing that Miller started to realize, that some people had these strategies where they could remember, 20 things. How did they do that? Then he started to notice that's part of chunking. They would chunk them not as 10 separate things, but as 3 things. So like here you have a telephone number. The three numbers become 1 number. So now you've got, instead of that would be 10 numbers, I've got 3 numbers to remember. So that's an interesting way of chunking. And this, by the way, is a big part of what happens why we use multiple intelligences. Because what could take me a lot of words to say, I can show in a gesture. And that gesture is a way of actually chunking a bunch of words into one thing. So this is a kind of an interesting process. So again, these are, we won't go into this, but if you take like when I write a book, right, I've got the way I do it is I actually constantly use this 7 plus or minus 2 things. I start with my main topic, which might be, generative consulting. And then I go, well, what are the 5 to 7 main things about that? Okay, those are the chapters. Take each chapter. What are the 5 to 7 main things about that? Chunk that down. And for each one of those, what are the 5 key points? Now then you finally get, as we said, to sentences, clauses, words, syllables, letters. So
I think most of us intuitively know if our list is more than 7, we better edit it down a little bit. I'm just going to cover 14 different points here. And you know that people will not be able to follow that. They say, I want to stay in the 6 or 7 range in order for it to have enough differentiation, but for people to be able to absorb it as a whole.
And that's why we use that 5-word limit for the intention. And we try to keep that as a basic sort of a structure also for each of these steps. So again, big steps, goals, actions. So you're chunking it down. We'll go into all this, but I'm sure Robbie and Caroline know these things well. If you're going to organize a conference, you got to put the schedule, got to contact the presenters, got to get the materials, da, 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 da. So you're kind of chunking it down. That's how you go from this dream of a great conference into an actual reality like this. So we're going to do this again, basic prototype. So coach state, we get our intention, we get our generative state, the 3 positive connections.
That's the setup. That's the setup that's preparing you to take action.
Then we're going to begin to create this timeline. And it's key there. There's a key word that's step number 4 there, slowly move. Right? Because the more quickly you go, the more likely there's going to be for generalization, deletion, distortion. So just like we've been doing all along, I want each step to be rich, kind of like I was saying, this point here, I gotta undo all these things, that big chunks are more information rich, but they're more abstract. So I need to kind of pull that information, that richness out into actions. And that's what we want to do here in this exercise. So, and as it says here, once you get the steps, you sort of repeat them. So now the story is not these different steps, it's a whole story that's unfolding. And so in a way, you'll see that you might start with these different gestures. But then when I start putting them into the story, it's going to look like this. So it's now a whole movement. So that's what we like to do. And of course, we want to look for our next demo.
Person.
Okay.
So Claire, you know, as usual, we're gonna do our first couple of steps as we get ready to move into that step 4. So we're gonna do coach state, and you know, we've been doing various types of coach states. You know, some more informal, some more formal.
Yeah.
What is your best way? What do you like to do? And what has seemed to work for you the best? in the past days?
Actually, I like to look out from the window of my room, and I can see the cable car and the Millennium Dome. And then my flat actually, when I look out, is the primary school, the play field.
Yeah.
So it's like a very open, wide space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I see
like
there's
to
kind
out.
of this gesture,
Yeah.
and it's like looking out a window.
Yeah.
And,
looking out.
and Claire, when you do that, what do you experience inside? What happens when you look there and you see the Millennium Dome, you see the cable car, you see the school?
Yes, I just saw what happened. People maybe propose inside the cable car and they said, "Darling, I love you, memory, no, Saki," or something like that. Or when you're looking down the playground, you can see the kids there. They are playing game together.
Yeah.
And it's quite interesting. And the Millennium Dome is like a birthday cake. There's a candle on top. So this is the best I like. I watch every day.
And when you do that, what does that awaken inside of you? Because those are sort of the images, and what kind of happens inside that gets you into this?
I get very warm up.
Warm.
Yeah, and then so I
Where
like
is-
a hot weather.
Yeah. Where do you feel that warm?
The warm is in my heart,
Yeah.
chest area, and
Yeah.
then sometimes go to my belly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is
It's
like
kind
it.
of sharing that warm with you.
Yeah.
From the heart to the belly.
Mm.
And kind of so that's a lot about open. And when you center, when you really want to get that place of centered, how do you do that? Do you add anything to this, or does this have that centering part in it as well? Like you can feel, I'm looking out there open, but I'm also really.
I think it's more like a warm up kind of feeling.
Yeah.
And then it's openness, and then also it's kind of freedom as well, because I can see the airplane take off and landing in a city airport.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of possibility.
A lot of possibilities.
Yeah.
And how do you have that sense then of really connecting to yourself? Because that's kind of connecting outwards, which is great.
Yes.
We also want to have that kind of complementing one of, I'm going out that way.
It's
but
a
I'm also-
happiness, happy,
Yeah.
and see people. It's a good memory and associate the kind of warm feeling.
Yeah.
And then in present, and then comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of
I
feeling.
see you start actually moving a little bit when you say, comfortable. And do you feel anything in the legs and the feet?
Actually, generally, I have a cold feet all the time.
That's
But,
interesting.
That's why my first thing I warm up myself is like looking out, and it's like kind of the whole system activated by looking outside.
That's interesting. So I'm curious, if you let all that warmth go from there to there, and then
go
all the
down.
way down into the feet, could it warm up your cold feet?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, I got cold feet for everything,
This is the right step for you.
Okay.
But I'm curious if let's just take a moment, because I feel like it might be really nice to just let that warmth go all the way down into the feet for just a moment.
Yeah.
Just kind of notice what happens if you do that.
Okay.
And this idea of, how our tension brings energy and our chi. And if we kind of bring that down into the feet and then the earth, and still looking out at all those possibilities. And,
Get excited. I
want
want to walk.
to walk. Okay.
Yeah.
And if we were talking about the sense of a positive connection to yourself and what we're calling a coach state, and if you were to think on a scale of 0 to 10, where would you be right now?
I always stayed from 7,
7.
safe figure.
So,
Yeah, you can have something to work on.
yeah, so 7 is good. I'm just curious if we wanted to get that up to, I don't know, 7.5. What might you add, or what might you do that just sort of like
make sure my boiler is working and then the central heating is on and turn to like 23 degrees or something.
okay, so let's do that.
Okay. Good. Yeah, 23, yeah. Yeah.
So feel ready to go.
Yeah.
So let's find out where we're going together.
Okay.
So what would, we've been talking about this idea of an intention. That's step 1. So now the step 2 is that intention. So, we have some moments here, 20 minutes or so to work together. What would be something would be really important for you to work on creating, even though you didn't put your name in the bucket? Yeah, I got an opportunity.
How's it possible?
What would be something that could be really, really useful for you? I know it was interesting. We were having a conversation about what to do professionally, but I don't know what would be, what is something that you would like to?
In the beginning, I'm thinking to have create my own business.
Yeah.
But at the moment, also working on the freedom to make my own decision, which is
That's interesting.
I can complete my study and also I can relocate it, possibly back to my family. Yeah, so that's a lot. So
yeah, I see that. I mean, first of all, and I see when you kind of do that a lot, I see some of that place of openness and groundedness kind of seems to get a little shaken there. So
yeah.
But you said the words that you used that I thought were really interesting, and maybe we could slow down and feel the resonance of those words and what they might mean. As you said, I want to have the freedom to make my own decisions.
Yes.
And that seems to me to be somehow important, because you said, well, first I wanted to create a business, but actually this freedom to make my own decisions comes before that.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, as you kind of really, slow that down, breathe that through you, freedom to make my own decisions. What does that mean for you? What is that about for you?
So make my own decision and then no boundary.
Yeah. And when you say make my own decision, what is that like for you? What is the difference between not making your own decision? How do you?
I don't know, maybe it's because of COVID, which is I can't see. And there's no problem to go back to visit my family.
Yeah.
But kind of stuck in my study at the moment.
Okay.
And then so it's not physically trapped here.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I feel that I need to actually accomplish what actually created, in the first place, which is finish the study.
Yeah, so it's actually interesting. I'm getting a sense here that this decision is not so much about starting something right now as it is about finishing something. Is that?
Yes, about completion something, because financially I'm not really worried at the moment.
Yeah, so it's not a financial thing.
No, it's not a financial thing, and I still have money coming. But I just saying that it's about accomplishment, because this kind of field, the psychology thing, is really a lot, Yeah.
So I'm getting the sense of kind of like this dynamic between, as you said, the sort of open possibilities and freedom, and then this thing of a lot, and that kind of and when you have that feeling of a lot, it doesn't feel like you have the freedom to make your own decision.
Yeah, I think just like the interesting thing you say is like I got to get to the finish line,
Yeah.
but I got to relaxing
That's
first,
interesting.
and
Yeah.
so I think I put too much
That-
pressure on myself.
Yeah, that makes
that-
sense. That
Yeah,
makes
so
sense.
that's
So it's kind of
creative.
like what you mean by the freedom to make your own decision is it's like not I've got to have to force myself, but I want to complete something, but I want to
Yeah.
do it in a way that is really
yeah,
ecological and in this
yeah.
place.
I don't want to be a turtle. I want to be the bunny, but unfortunately, it seems like I'm in a turtle's space speed in a
Yeah.
moment.
So I'm
Yeah.
curious if we were going to switch. So we know that something about the kind of initial words were freedom to make my own decision.
Mm.
What sort of and specifically it seems like about your studies right
Mm.
now because and just as a comment, here's where we want to start to get to step 4.
Yeah.
We got to start. It can't be so abstract because
Mm.
I can make decisions about anything.
Mm.
So here it seems that kind of the most immediate thing is about your studies.
Yes.
Okay. So, okay, well, that seems to resonate. Yeah, okay. So I want to have the
Yeah.
freedom to make my own decisions specifically about my studies. And then you said, and it's not so much only about finishing, and it's the way that I finish them that's important.
Yeah, I wanted to finish in my own way.
Yeah. So now I kind of hear something. I want to finish my studies in my own way.
Yeah, but it's about people, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not about me. If you go into the therapy room, it's about them.
So now we have very interesting,
Yeah.
remember how we say that as soon as I begin to set that intention, a lot of the obstacles are already going to start to show themselves. And we want to say, yeah, welcome to that. So here I have this dynamic between me and what I want and others and what they're doing. And so how do I have that freedom? Because that's one of the things we've been talking about. How do I have that freedom in a place where it's not like I can just do whatever I want, but I want to be able to do it in the way that I want.
Yeah, because I think there's on Zoom someone talking about counter transparency, and which is that actually if you have the boundary, to make sure the healthy boundary, make sure they won't hurt me, put it this way, because it's quite important for me. And so studying and then doing the practice is slightly different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I'm curious about, because I think this is where words become kind of more difficult as a way to describe it, is if you were going to show with your body the way that you would want it to be, if you could create this the way that you would like it, how would that be? Because you were saying, well, I don't want it to be like this. I don't want it to be like this, or so how would it be? If you were able to finish your studies the way that you want to, and you couldn't say it in words, how would you show it with your gesture?
Recently, I've started doing the boxing. So I hand in a punch bag. I have no idea why I want to carry 30 kilograms of punch bag into my room anyway. So I carry out, hung in there. I start punching. And then you study 14 hours a day. And now I only say I'm tired, just do 6 hours. And most of the time just boom, boom, cha, 1 hour a day, 4 days a week.
So is that kind of the way that
the movement? I'm start creating the movement myself.
So with my studies, I kind of want to be able to do something like that.
It's like 1, 1, 2. Yeah, 1, 1, 2. Or you want to do this, you move the central. I lose 8 kilograms by doing that.
Great. So
I haven't finished my writing. I'm losing it.
So very interesting, because what I was getting as coach when I was sort of nearing you is those it's that kind of, it's not like this. It's that each one of those is coming from my center.
You have to, otherwise you hurt your feet. I actually have a bruises here.
So that's the way I would like to approach my studies.
I want to make myself more aggressive in some way that I have to hit that. Otherwise, I just like, oh, you're lovely, and then so it doesn't work,
Doesn't work. But also it was interesting, because what I think about the boxing that sounds important is that you were also saying, I need to do this in a way where I've got these healthy boundaries and but it's not going to hurt me. So it's kind of like, okay, this is my way of also making sure that I'm
Yeah,
safe.
just like you said, if you the punch bag is there, is fixed, it's not moving. However, if you get too close, then
Yeah.
you will hurt your face, and then
Yeah.
basically your shoulder will be very painful.
Yeah.
And then so you need to make sure you backward and then you just quick as soon
Yeah.
as possible,
Yeah.
and just account it and you move back. But if you stick there and then you hurt more,
I just
so
have to
it's
say,
kind of
I'm getting, as I'm watching you, I'm getting these images of Bruce Lee.
no, he's good, and
Oh yeah, but it had
Yeah.
that very, it's like that fluidness as well.
Yeah, I try to find a way to actually help myself, just
Yeah.
like you said, the somatic, because I'm sitting there for too long watching out, and
Yeah.
people they have a good memory there. I was sitting here, it doesn't really help. So
Yeah.
I need to create some kind of movement for
So that's
myself.
interesting.
Yeah.
I need to, because that's what part of what I was even kind of sensing when we started. I'm looking out there, but I also need to start.
Yeah, and you can swear,
Yeah.
and nobody hear you.
And but you're also saying I can, and I've got to do this in the right way because I can get hurt if I'm too close. I can hurt my hand.
Yeah,
So this seems to be, I mean, it seems like that what you've been learning in your body from here is like really important as a really deep metaphor for how
Yeah.
to go about your studies.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious also, so now we have some words here. We have our somatic model. What about your image for this? If you could have your image of the way that I would like to, complete my studies, what would that image be?
I was surprised that actually doing the coach with another assistant. I actually see myself in the airplane. I was sitting inside the airplane and looking out. I couldn't see anything. It's like a completely bright, bright light.
Interesting.
And then I don't know why. I don't want to be a bird. It's too cold. I think the airplane will be easier for me to carry me.
Kind of actually an interesting thing
There's an
that
image
comes
you
to
want.
me of that image,
Yeah.
because your image of looking out of your room is kind of static. Here you're looking out, but you're also moving somehow.
Mm,
And also you said something is carrying you. Maybe that
and
seems to be kind of an important combination of things, and each one of the representations to me kind of has a different aspect to it,
yeah,
Yes.
and then the thing I really like is like because the Excel center is here, and then there's a bridge from this side to the other side.
Yeah.
So sometimes I will walk through the bridge, but I will take the photos
Yeah.
of the sunset.
Oh,
Yeah, I like to take the photo of sunset, so the airplane will land right close to me land, and then I like that image.
yeah.
Yeah,
Also, to me, there's an interesting thing about sunset because it's sort of like the completion of something, right? It's like that finishing. So,
well, there's a sunrise.
yes, and then there's a sunrise.
Yeah.
So what I'd like to invite us to do
Mm.
is we're going to start on a timeline here because we want to kind of start to move to step 3.
Okay.
And for you, I mean, we have a choice here because we're going to be making a timeline. We could either say, there's the present and there's the future, or here's the present and there's the future. And it's kind of up to you which feels best for you. If we were going to, like, would your future be kind of like more that way, or would it be more this way? Which way would you like to?
Future will be that way.
Okay.
Past will be this way.
So let's start here and kind of face that way. And so step there and kind of just as you put yourself on your timeline and say, okay, there's where I want to go. And I know what I want to do is to complete my studies in the way that I would like, And I want to also, because I see that myself on an airplane, I see that sunset. So just take a moment and we're going to first make those, going to do our coach state. So kind of coming back to that place. And here, adding, I'm not only looking out the window, I can also feel the sense of my presence, the warmth going down all to my body, to my feet, the earth. And then there I can bring my attention to that desired state. And you were making a gesture, kind of interested if you were to sort of make this gesture of your coach state and that warmth. what would be your, yeah.
Mm.
And then we were speaking about that desired state, which was you were kind of showing with that punching bag. I want to kind of complete my studies. So I want to go from there and go,
You want to do it now?
yeah, if you were to do it right now, just first just set that intention right here. So I want to connect to that here. Can you?
Yes, but things probably drop out, you know.
That's a, well, okay.
You sure?
Yeah, yeah. Just, I mean,
Okay.
just to show here that first part.
You need to turn. You need to be the boxer, you know.
Yeah.
You can't just
I
stand
know.
there where people beat it dead, you know.
Don't worry. Okay, fantastic.
Okay, your turn now.
I actually, you might not believe it, but I actually have a trophy for boxing. My
Okay.
father was boxing,
Oh, good.
maybe so.
Yeah. No.
Watch where the attention goes.
Okay.
He's also a fencer.
Yeah, actually, it definitely hurt, you know, each other if we really beat each other.
Once
I
you
don't
be
want to
careful.
die yet.
So that's what I want to be able to do. And then you have that image. And the question I really want to ask here is,
Yeah.
because we're going to need some other resources, right? So to really travel that path and achieve that, we want to get that sense of that support here and resources in step 3.
Okay.
So we know that you have this is your coming from your inner resource. What other support will you need from your field of resources to help you to do this, to complete your studies in the way you want? Who or what can really support you?
My tutor, and then I already have my own therapy session, and I also hire a tutor for my writing.
So tutor.
Yeah, and then a lot of study I read. Yeah, that's thing.
So I get that's a lot kind of for the cognitive part of this, but for this place of you're being able to do it really in this way that you want, who can support you with that so that you can, that.
Actually, no one. Actually, people ask me to skip up.
So that's interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Actually ask you to give up.
Because they say it take too long.
So Claire, I want to just pause for a moment, because I'm sure that seems to be an important part of this storyboard here. That actually you said, nobody really supports me to do it. Actually, instead they're telling me to give up. So I just want to acknowledge that.
Well, maybe not my parents. My parents will say, just finish it.
Yeah. Parents
Yeah,
say,
you
"Just
can
finish
do
it."
it.
You can do it.
Yeah, that's my
So
parents say.
parents help you. I'm also curious if we kind of you really tuned into that place of what I really need to be able to finish my studies in the way that I really want to. And yeah, I have my tutors to help me writing and do these other things, but to really do it in this way that I want to, what would be the most important inner support you would need to support for what? To really succeed in this? Would it be trust, confidence? It's going to really help you to do this the way you want.
It's an interesting question because I think I need to keep up myself. And then there is a system there. And then so more practice and then just do it because there's not such your way or my way. And then so it's just like in a relationship, it's just not really what I want them to do. It's what they want me to be there to help them to do. Yeah.
So interesting, Stephen was talking about earlier. Sometimes I like to have this sense of like, what we call a role model. So a role model for the way I would, if I had a role model for the way I want to do this, who I can, and it doesn't have to necessarily be for the same thing for studies, but just for the way I want to do this, who might be your role model for that?
Erickson.
Erickson.
Yeah.
That's a good role model.
And Adler.
And
Adler.
Attila?
Yeah.
Like the Attila,
No, Adler is individuality. There's a, yeah.
Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So let's welcome them here. So we got your tutors.
Mm.
We've also got Erickson and Attila.
Mm.
Where would you feel, I mean, if Erickson was really here supporting you,
Mm.
where would you sense his presence near you? Would he
Be here?
he'd be here?
Mm.
I Milton. Well, welcome.
Yeah, welcome. I don't know.
I feel that presence right here. It's very
Yeah.
and oh, there's room for,
Yeah.
and Attila, where would that be?
He's pushing everything. Yeah. They're about the same height, I think. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So let's really welcome them both here, because I think that's going to be important for you.
Mm.
And you know, here's that place. We want to get that third connection. And I'm curious, what would be your gesture if you could really sense that connection to them and know their resources that they bring you? I see your hands are kind of naturally doing this. It's something like that.
Yeah.
So we have kind of our coach state.
Mm.
We have our desired state.
Okay. Yeah.
You have these resources.
Mm.
And what about really connection now to yourself? Because this is about, you said in an interesting way, it's about doing it my way, but not my way from an ego sense.
Mm.
Doing it this way that I would like to. Where would you most feel that sense of, yeah, this is the way I really want to do it? But it's not I'm going to do it my way versus their way, but really that's my way. Where would you feel that in your body?
There's this bit and this bit as well. Yeah.
And what would be your gesture for that? Would it be
Gesture?
Yeah.
Yeah, would be this. Yeah. Mm.
So here now, again, to get our generative state. So yeah, I have that connection. I have my coach state. I have my intention. I have my resources. And maybe just kind of connect to those. My center. Coach state. Intention. And it seems that all those are important, you know.
And my parents.
And your parents. And where would your parents be? How do you feel your parents here? That's so. Thank you for saying that they're important. Where are they? If you were to sense them in this field around you.
On my phone. Just finish it. Okay, no problem.
Where do you keep your phone usually?
My pocket.
Okay, so here.
Yeah.
Parents here.
Yes. Yeah.
So I got Erickson, Attila, mom and dad. Me. My coach state.
My coach state.
Warm.
And you and Stephen.
And me. We will be there. Your intention.
Yes.
Resource. So I'm curious, and this is where I'd like to do this, because as we start moving into step 4, what I'd like to actually invite you to do first is if we were to walk up, you know, that it's kind of like you were already doing. If I was to go to the end of this timeline and say, I did it. I actually completed my studies in the way that I want to. Yeah, kind of if you put yourself there and be there. I completed my studies exactly the way I wanted to.
That would be good.
Yeah, and what would that be like?
It will be like,
Yeah.
I can go home now. Thank you, God. Get out fish and chips. Okay.
Give up fish and chips. I can go home now.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's really kind of get that sense. Yeah.
Yes.
Did it.
Yes.
So now our question is, how did you get here? And if you take a moment,
I'm talking to you.
so actually,
Yeah.
if you sort of turned around and looked back for a moment, say, okay, so what did I do to get here? It's like I started here, and now I got here. So what would you say would be, and here's where we like to use that number of like maybe 3, 4, 5? What are the sort of key things that got you to be here?
Oh,
You can you can stay here and sort of
Okay.
look back. And you don't necessarily have to see all of the, the details.
yeah.
But I know that you're good at kind of picturing things. And my
Mm.
question is, what would be sort of the key things that get you from here to there? Just, what do you notice? What would you say comes to you as the most important things to do?
I said two step forward, one step back, but you still have the one step forward
Mhm.
and you get it.
Yeah. So sort of, I see you said 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but it's still 1 step forward.
Yeah. And I will never actually go back to the original place.
And I won't go back to the original.
No, I won't actually go back to the original. I still moving forward.
Yeah, always, even if you took two steps forward, 1 step
Yeah,
back, it doesn't go
yeah.
to the original place.
Yeah.
So that seems something important. What else in terms of either kind of decisions to make, steps to take, as you sort of look, what's going to get me here? So it's kind of like from here,
Mm.
what have I done? What is the way that I got here in the way I wanted to?
To admit, I have a lot to learn.
I have a lot to learn.
And then doing the boxing, unless the day I start hurting myself,
Mhm.
by have a less distance, and I will be very skilled boxer.
Yeah,
And then it take days to practice.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing you say is really including that actual practice of boxing as part of your journey.
Yes, yes, yeah. I think the practice is very important. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And-
And take action. I think action is quite important.
What would be an action? What would be some action that you might see yourself taking here?
Stop listen to myself
Mhm.
and then say there's no perfect way to
Mhm.
to get there.
So that's
And then
seems to
you
be-
can be very messy starter, but
Yeah.
you probably can finish it very seasonal boxer,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. I've always said to myself,
Mm.
anything worth doing is worth doing poorly at first. So
Yeah, some people will say you just fake it before you make it. I'll say, why don't be fake? I don't want to be fake.
yeah. So what do you want to do? What is your way?
Just I say, but I just want to be perfect to have the first step. But it seems not working
Yeah.
for the past year. And then so that's why I get a boxing bag at
Yeah.
home. I have no idea. I think I need to be
Yeah.
more aggressive. Well, shouldn't use aggressive, but have to. Otherwise, just
Yeah.
you just create a momentum. you
Yeah.
know.
you
And
can
then
create momentum.
it is a lot of thing in your head. It's like, how can I never actually get it down in such a long time?
Yeah.
And then so when you say something negative word and you just hit the back and then
Uh-huh.
yeah.
So that bag is kind of also, if you have any of those negative words, you can.
Yeah, sometimes it can be a person, sometimes it can be a word, can be a critique, but I just hit it, whatever.
Hmm.
Yeah,
So I'm curious, because
yeah.
we're going to start walking the storyboard in just a second. What would be your most important advice to yourself here from the future where I did it?
Mm.
I know I
Shut
can
up,
do it.
bitch, just do it. I just say that. I normally I don't swear to myself.
So how would you say that to yourself in a way that
Well, you took so many courses already, and then it's nothing waste.
Mm.
And
so
then
nothing's
so
wasted?
yeah, there's nothing wasted. Yeah.
So that's interesting.
Yeah, just you still have 50 years to live. You never know when you do need it, but at least you get trained, you get better every day.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
You get better every day.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking at the moment.
That's interesting.
Mm.
So I'm going to invite you then. Let's come back here to the
Okay.
starting point.
Okay.
And now we've got our coach state.
Mhm.
that connection to you,
Mm.
connection to your desired state,
Mhm.
those resources of Erickson, Atala, and parents,
Pocket of parents.
parent pocket. And then you have this future, and now there's this you in the future that's saying, you know, I did it. And she's saying, hey, wait. So wait, she's still saying,
Okay.
you know, hey, there's nothing wasted.
Mm.
You've got all this time,
Mm.
but also shut up, bitch, and get going. So,
Okay.
so what would be, I'm just curious, and we also know that there's something about, okay, letting go of it has to be perfect, taking two steps forward. So I'm just really curious, what will be, so when we're finished here and you are taking these steps, what's going to be that first step? What will you do as you go into action in a concrete way?
Concrete way.
Yeah, so what am I going to do next?
So some punch, and then pull back a little bit,
Yeah.
and punch and
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
And then we'll be here, isn't it?
Yeah, and what does that mean in terms of your studies? Say a little bit about, well, so what does that mean in terms of my studies?
Oh. Studies like
Yeah, yeah. What's that in terms of my study?
I still need to write 1,000 words and delete 800 words.
Okay, that's right.
1,000 words and back 500 words, and then another 1,000, another 800, another 1,000, another 800, another 1,000,
Oh,
another
wow.
200, and then bang, bang, bang.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Let's do that one more time.
Okay.
Because actually I saw you, I mean, because I saw you actually throwing those punches a little bit more confidently towards the end. So
Okay.
I'm going to do, all right, you ready?
I've done my enough exercise today. Okay. Okay.
So we're going to tell the story of my success. Ready?
Okay. Very good.
Write those 1,000 words.
I need to write 1,000 words and then delete 800, 100,000, 800, 100,000, 200, 100,000, another 500, another 1,000, and you get there. Yeah.
And then
So it, fish and chips, bye. Okay.
Larry, I got a good workout too, thanks. So I'm just curious as we kind of wrap up, because again, here we're kind of really getting more of that sense of, as you said, that's the way I want to do it.
Okay.
Does that seem to fit with you? Is that like, that's
Yeah.
the way I want, that's my way. That's the way I'm going to do it.
That's the way I'm doing it. Yes.
So anything that would be, that you would want to share about, well, what was either important for you or your kind of your main takeaway from this practice, even though you didn't put your name in there?
Yes. Why you bring me to that question again? It's fantastic, and then sometimes it is hard to tell myself, and then it's not actually my way because it's kind of stubborn.
Yeah.
And then I really appreciate Robert to bring me there, and then maybe I do something for some reason, and then but it's actually helped my own health, and also my somatic body actually make me move forward as well.
Yes.
And then so until now that I never know that actually boxing actually is helping me to do that as
That's
well.
interesting to know.
And and then Erickson, because I have a heart problem, I have a surgery. So that's why I was thinking if Erickson can melt Mr. Erickson, then he can actually overcome the problem, the physical body. And I think I can actually do it as well.
Wow.
So that's why I just read it and then read Stephen Stoker and say, I want to be one. Yeah. So things happen for a reason.
Yeah.
But I just say if once I open my state and then welcome that, and then it's not try to ignore there's nothing around you, there's something around you. Yeah, it's a very important experience. I know. Thank you, Robert. Thank you very much.
Thank you. again, when we're working in generative change, we're working in these different levels and you could say dimensions of reality. I think one of the keys that Claire was sharing is, having even some kind of a physical practice is something that grounds you. It's one of the reasons I run every day. It's like also my way of getting into myself and moving ahead. It's you got to be careful, Claire. You start doing that, you're going to write 28 books, and 1,000 words, deleting them in time. But this idea of doing it doesn't have to be perfect at first. I can then let go. I mean, Erickson. There's a famous story about Erickson, where he would write a whole trance induction. It would be like 10 pages. 50.
Mm.
And then he'd rewrite it down to, well, I mean, not right. But he didn't rewrite it from 50 down to 1. He would like 50 to 30 to 20 to, and finally he'd get it down to 1 page.
We joked 1 word, but yeah, it's more than that.
So I think that idea of, okay, that's how I master something. That's how I really bring it into reality. It doesn't have to be perfect the first time. But to welcome the part of me that wants it to be perfect. That's okay. That's going to be there as well. So just as a kind of a backtracking, we get our coach state, our intention, the 3 representations of the intention. Then we want to get our 3 positive connections. We're adding the resources and that kind of rhythm between them. And then this is one prototype where we would say, because you could just say, what's the first step, and move into the first step. This one we were saying, well, let's kind of go to this desired state. What would that be like if I did it? And sort of look back. What is it that I can see brought me here? That's one way. I mean, there's many other ways, but ultimately we then want to be walking. What are those steps? And we had, I think, very, very interesting, I think going to be a very interesting example that I can certainly relate to.
Yeah, I just silent uncharacteristically, I think partly because your work was touching me very deeply. It's just trying to like sit with that. And usually when we're just hearing somebody's story, as we've been talking about, we're trying to let it just move through different levels of the body and feel there's different resonances and different things, and realize there's certain statements that have multiple meanings to them. And we're just slowly trying to piece together kind of what this underlying choreograph is. So the 2 things that I continue to ponder, you say, this is really what I want to be doing in my life right now. And then I meet a lot of resistance, and I was just curious, who is saying you should do it my way, or you can't do it your way? And I was really impressed. Like, you somehow got this idea, it's time to learn boxing. And you have pretty good form for somebody who just got a punching bag in their house, and you were like looking at his form and going, come on, you can do better than that. But it just sort of, I mean, to me, those are like 2 complementary pieces. One is, this is what I want to put out in the world. And the second is, these are the obstacles that tell me I have no right, or I can't do it my way, or what have you. And so I was just still am sitting with that, because it was very, very compelling to me, that what you were talking about just had a lot of soul resonance to it. So I just send you a lot of California Big Brother support.
So by the way, for those of you who are online, here, and I do this, I definitely do this online coaching a lot. You will have a timeline, and you're going to be standing up, and usually you're kind of moving within the frame, if you can, of your Zoom box there. But I think this is especially important to do when you're doing it virtually, to get that movement, to get the body engaged. So, and again, usually we're going to want to have that timeline be something that's more going along the side so you can watch the steps, because if I'm walking towards you on the Zoom, it's kind of harder to see which one is which. That's just a tip. And of course, you can do it however you like. But what you might do next, by the way, is once we get that, you could see I was kind of starting the invitation to Claire to do this is now I can take each of these steps and start to chunk it down. So, okay, that first 1,000 words. All right, that's interesting. What will those first 1,000 words be about? How will you, where will you go to write those words? What will that be like? Let's take that first. I've got my first 1,000 words done now. What's that like? Okay, how did I do that? So that would be another part of chunking down. Now, realistically, with a client, I'm going to know that clients will already be able to do some things. They don't need my help to chunk it down. They already know how to do that part. If they can get the, which part of these chunks, if they get it, the rest they can automatically do. So that becomes an interesting thing that you can only know with an individual client. Where do I have to help them chunk down, and where can they just do that on their own? Yes, Amanda? Go ahead.
I just like to say thank you, Claire. It really moved me. And I think as a woman as well, finding and that sort of, for me, the journey of being a mother and also trying to find the warrior for myself and for my girls. It really moved me, and the power that came from your sort of is it Tantian? What is it called? That part? It just really fueled me. I could, just feel that power and that swing. I just want to go out and move and fight and dance. And thank you so much.
That's partially. That's partially why we wanted to repeat that a couple of times, because I remember I was saying I could see you much more confidently doing here. Then, yeah, that's now instead of that kind of holding back. And it also is it's not a straight line, right? I'm not always going to just do it, the same way. I might start a little slower and then speed up, but that's. So I think what we would do is like we've done before, find a partner, take a break. So let's do 15-minute break, and then maybe 30 minutes each, I think, for this. Yeah. So we will be coming back here in 1 hour and 15 minutes, which would be at 5:15.
Okay, so get a partner, 15-minute break, 30 minutes each way, return by.
Muriel, you have. Yeah. Oh, yes, thank you, Muriel. One thing, and especially for the Zoomers, there, just like here, when people are practicing, our resource team members will be kind of walking by, coming near your group, seeing if you have any questions. And online, they're going to sort of periodically pop into your rooms. And it's not because they're the crash critic that's going to say you're doing it wrong. It's just to check in, make sure that if you have any questions, or if you need any clarification. So please feel free to welcome them. It's a good practice staying in your coach state as well and staying with those 3 connections. So it's an important part of the program to have that kind of supervision and checking in. And it's not to blame, judge, it's to support. So now that you had a chance to sort of get through these first 4 steps, we want to find out any sharings, any other questions. So, what came out of that? Any learnings? So learnings, sharings, questions, insights. One thing we do want to encourage you is that sharing is really helpful, because oftentimes when you share something, other people realize, oh yeah, I just saw that too, or I experienced that too. So
Go ahead, Jack.
Jenny.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it was just a very small sharing, but for a very big
Yeah.
results. We worked with Valentino, who was a lovely guide. And it was just the very simple thing that something so unobtainable
Yeah.
suddenly became, oh, well, I'll just do that. So that was all I wanted to share, that it's very, very powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something so sweet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And any sense about what allowed that shift?
What was the
to occur?
difference that made the difference?
Looking at it from centering,
Yeah,
Yes.
that's cool.
making the goal smaller,
Yes.
or paring
Chunking
it down,
Chunking it down.
chunking it down, paring it down, so that there's just something I can manage that, and then from that there's a possibility beyond.
Yes.
So yeah, the chunking down.
That's great. Yeah.
It's
Sorry.
like, it's like that riddle. How do you eat a whole watermelon? One bite at a time. So, and that's chunking down. Take that.
When I was studying with Milton Erickson, he was paralyzed a good part of his life. When I knew him the last 6 years of his life, he was partially paralyzed. He was in a wheelchair. And I was, 19, 20, and I was into karate. And I would stay, he had his office and a little guest room connected to the residence. And one evening around dinner time, I had something to give to Mrs. Erickson. So I went through the backyard and knocked on the screen door of the kitchen. And I heard Erickson's voice, come in. And I came in and he had a purple jumpsuit. Erickson, everything was purple because he was colorblind. The only color he could see was purple. So he was the purple one before Prince, or the artist formerly known as Prince. And he was at the kitchen table. He was cutting vegetables for the dinner. And I looked at him and, he was God to me. And he said, I'm getting my workout. And, to my representational maps of what a workout was, that wasn't in the Rolodex at all. And the usual, I was bewildered. And he said, most people focus on what they can't do, but I always enjoy focusing on what I can do and take great pleasure in that. So that's what he could do. Chunking something. This is what I can do. And in the end, that's the only thing that makes a difference, right? It's what I can do.
And then a lot of those little can do's become a big can do. A whole yummy soup. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody online have anything to share or to ask about relating to storyboarding, moving into action?
Intention, coach field.
Anybody else in the room have something to share, clarify? Yes. Can we have the Mark?
Mark remembers once again to be responsible for the mic.
Is that on?
Is that on?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So, I'm Andy.
And
Hi, Andy.
One of the things that I'm grateful for and that I noticed this today is that we keep doing the same thing a lot of times.
Yeah.
We keep reiterating the coach
Yes.
state, and so we've now done that many times today, and so in a way we haven't got to practices yet, but we are internalizing this whole process of
Yes.
doing this many times, and that's a wonderful thing. And so already today, having done this same thing. I know we can't step into the same river twice, but we've done the same thing many times.
Yes.
And I'm really enjoying that and finding really helpful to do this.
But we can't step in the same river twice, right?
We can't.
Well,
or we can.
Heraclides, you're quoting Heraclides, right? He said you can't step it, but he had a brother named Fred Cledes.
Who was able to do that very thing.
Well, Fred said you can step in the same dog shit over and over. And that's what happens, right? It's like, damn, same dog shit, the same damn problem. I mean, that's where people come to see us, is when there is no freshness to the dog shit. So we're sort of looking at what if in the actual present moment, it's always something different and new.
Yeah.
What is going on when people are in their problem state? And I think really we can say that people leave the present moment and then they just get stuck in a frozen, stuck in a moment of time. And so all this stuff about breath and centering and rhythm and movement is to return the mind into the present moment, where Heraclides reigns over Fred. Fred was really a cynic.
Thank you.
And, we like to say that there's an old saying from Papua New Guinea that knowledge is only a rumor until it's in the muscle. So, and how long does it take to get something in the muscle? I know from coaching my son's baseball team, if you're going to change somebody's swing, it takes probably 3 weeks of practice. So you're not gonna try it once and go, oh yeah, I got it. I've got to get that in the muscle. And so I think that's that, starting practicing now. And there's a lot of ways you can do it. My wife and I, when we're in Paris, we like to practice coach state in the metro. We call it metro surfing, so you let go and you got to stay down. And it's a really great way to practice active centering, because if you get rigid, you're going over. So you got to stay in that moving river. So thank you for sharing.
It's the old Aikido story of one of the great masters. In the beginning, he's in a beginning class. He's doing basic like Ikkyo technique. And the person says, "You're the master. What are you doing in the beginning class?" He said, "I'm starting to get a feel for it." Which also is attributed to Pablo Casals. Pablo Casals in his 80s is still practicing at least 3 hours a day. And they say, "Pablo, you're the master." It's why he said, "I'm starting to get a feel for it." And I think that truly, I mean, you're saying one day, I'm just saying descriptively, and it's true for Robert too. This stuff I've been practicing every day for over 45 years. I'm not saying that to brag. And to me, it gets more and more interesting every day.
Yeah.
And this whole sense, and it's the most interesting time. I mean, to me, what makes the work so interesting is every time it's totally different. I said, God, that was the most interesting session. It was so different. I've never experienced anything like that
I
before.
never expected that.
How many of you know that feeling? And that comes from connection. When you're in the river swimming with Fred, then you can just wave to Harry, you can wave to Fred and say, "Step in your dog shit as much as you want. We're going for a swim, brother."
And Steve, who was it? Who was the pianist? Great pianist who said, if I don't practice for 1 day, I notice.
Oh yeah.
If I don't practice for 2 days, my critics notice. If I don't practice for 3 days, my audience notices.
No, I said
that was Casals? Okay.
Oh, whoever said it, he was very insightful.
Somebody who was masterful and wise.
Great, thank you. I was listening out for magic words. I remember you mentioned the magic dog. It's not a dog, it's a dog. You know.
Right, exactly.
And that was really interesting. So the goal was an it, but it wasn't it. It was an it, which
Yes.
is quite hard to explain. But the power of that, it really helped me to tune in and do a better job, I guess, to understand the importance. And so that was a real education. And the other thing that I want to ask really, there was that move of taking them to the other end of the timeline,
Right.
kind of saying with a twinkle in your eye, how did you get here then?
Yes.
And there's a part of me that would fear the other person going, I don't know. So I'm asking, is that a known kind of, is it a safe gamble? Is it, perhaps I'm overthinking it, but it's something I wouldn't do readily, I guess.
So I mean, I have a couple of answers for that. I mean, one is that's a technique that we actually, I mean, that Erickson used a lot. He called it pseudo orientation in time. Now, the thing is, if they don't know, then they're not really there. So first of all, that's what you got to know. If I don't know how I got here, then okay, you're not really there, right? If you're really there, you know, there's what you got here. So it's a matter now again, if somebody says, I don't know, is that a problem? That's what Erickson said all the time. I don't know. I'm curious to discover. So I don't know, if I don't know is coming out of crash, it's a problem. But that's going to be coming out of crash because all of those other steps have not been put solidly in place. So yeah, if I'm doing a shoddy job, I probably get the I don't know, and what that's going to tell me is, okay, let's go back to step one. Let's get back to there. Let's get that intention. So that would be a couple of answers. I'm sure there's other.
Yeah, there's a lot of other things, but I think that adequately responds to that. You want to make sure that whatever the expectation is, that you open another pathway from what's expected. You know, particularly when clients are caught in their problem map, that they're anticipating where things are going. And that means that if they think, oh, the next step is going to be here, they're going to be there to block it. You know, and I don't mean that cynically, just descriptively. So you're first joining with where a person is, and then you're always having to interrupt the pattern of the expectation to pop that sort of stranglehold, the tyranny of the conscious mind imposing things on the world. So whatever direction you think it is, you do the opposite would be, you know, kind of a simple first step of that. Also, I mean, probably one of the most brilliant creative therapists I ever saw was Carl Whitaker, who was a peer of Erickson's and had the very, very different style, but it was just extraordinarily brilliant. And he used to say that the number one characteristic of a healthy relationship was role reversibility. So that whatever the roles were, that you could switch those roles. And I think when you think, well, I'm this person and I'm the top dog, and you're, you know, then you're just lost in Fred Cleedy's. It's not, it's the same river. It's the same dog shit over and over and over. Mm-hmm. So we know that, you know, we say you have to break your routines. You need a break. We know that from, you know, that probably the most basic creativity model from over 100 years is this 4-step model that was developed by the American behaviorist Wallace. And said the first step is a conscious mind, where you focus on a question and you give it your best effort. So you totally have a commitment to it. You totally give your effort to try to solve that problem. So there's no substitute for hard work and commitment and effort. But inevitably, with a difficult challenge, you come up to the wall, you hit the impasse. And what do creative people do at that point? Nothing. They take a break. So the second step is you realize I'm in diminishing returns. Nothing new is happening. I need to take a break. So you see this in every creative person that take 2 hours a day. It's getting harder and harder and harder to do that because we're doing this in all of our free time. We don't have free time to just, feel the ocean and the sky and so forth. But that second step is called the incubation period. For me, probably the best ideas I have are in my California hot tub at midnight. That's when I'm home. I'm always my last conscious act of the day as I go out in the backyard and I'm soaked in the hot tub. And you're like working all day and it's like you build up all these fixed sets. You build up all these implicit biases that you're unconscious of. And so when you sit there and whatever your version of the hot tub is, you release all of your fixed frames. The creativity research for over 100 years says what's happening in that impasse is you're letting go of all your wrong assumptions and your wrong frames. So you're not getting anywhere new because you're stuck and you're unconsciously stuck. So if you do nothing except just go into your coach field, that empties the cup, so to speak. If you're lucky, and if you're motivated, and if you've committed, and if you have some experience in that area, if that all increases the chances of step 3, which is the illumination, the light bulb goes off. And all of a sudden something, and I think, you all know it's aesthetically such a beautiful thing. When you're like, what's the answer? And then you pause and then something comes from someplace else. And it's just such a beautiful quality. And that gives you something new. Then step 4, nothing's changed yet. You come back to the conscious mind and you got to do all the work to make it work. And we say in American English, I don't know if you Brits say it, the devil is in the detail. So I know it works. They say, I know it works in theory. Does it work in practice? The Irish say, we know it works in practice, but does it work in theory? So if you look at that model, that's conscious mind, unconscious, let go of all your frames, stop trying, go into just, I don't know, I'm curious. Pray for a miracle. And then if something comes from someplace else, then you come back to let's put it into practice.
We would also say that, one of our big principles for generative change is that any thinking that is accompanied by muscle tension is going to start to, you're closing the channel. So when you kind of go into that state, this is when you are now going beyond the cognitive conscious mind, like the thinking without muscle tension is now no longer coming from my cognitive mind. It's like I'm going online and I'm ready to download. And that's what I was saying about Mozart. Mozart said, I don't write the music. Right? I open to this place. He said actually, Mozart in this letter that he wrote said, it's when I'm actually doing something active, like riding in a carriage, walking after a meal. So that's when these ideas come and they flow most abundantly. So it's not when I'm sitting down going, what's the next note? It's, he said,
that doesn't mean you don't have to do those sitting down.
Yeah.
You really, it takes a lot of perspiration to get inspiration.
And but then it's that opening then starts to come, and he says, then the ones like these things, ideas will come, and the ones that resonate, then he starts to hum it. And actually, interestingly enough, he said, I'm told that I hum it, which means I'm not consciously doing it, but it's sort of flowing in. When I hum it, Then something happens. I start to see it. It starts to take
I
a
get a
shape.
big smile on the songwriter here. Jenny's a songwriter. She said, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And he said, and then the pieces start coming together. He said, like parts of a meal. You know, so if that's salty, that's got to be sweet, and that's how it starts. And he says, it starts to organize itself. It's really interesting. So the point is, we're saying that's a good example of generativity. Now, the other thing I would say,
So that was that long-winded response
I don't
was
know.
in response to, can you reverse directions? Do you do that a lot? And we're saying, whatever the expectation is, flip it and do the opposite as a general principle to get out of the rut and open the space to something new coming in.
And one other suggestion that relates to where we're going tomorrow is because we said, you know, invariably, when you start moving into action, you start hitting step 5, which is the obstacle. So somebody goes, I don't know. I go, oh, that's interesting. Welcome. You don't know. Welcome. How do you not know? What happens? How is it that you don't know? Does it go blank? Does everything shut down? Is there a voice that says you can't? I mean, that becomes then a very, very interesting exploration. Let's look at that. I don't know. I'm really curious. How do you do that? How is it that that's happening? And then invariably, you're gonna find that nobody's gonna say that unless they're in some type of crash. So then there's going to be that crash, and we're going to go, that's interesting. Welcome. Let's find out. Let's bring that here and begin to have that become one of our team members. So,
and that was Milton Erickson's greatest gift, sincerely. You know, you look at Erickson's students, everybody's got their own map of Erickson, which is more of their own map than anything else. But the one thing that people agree on about Erickson was his most important contribution was this notion of the utilization principle. That whatever was there in each moment had the seeds for transformation, but it required some sort of creative acceptance of whatever was there. And it was the creative acceptance that opened the seed to the possibility of something positive and new. So, well, we frame that in terms of welcome, welcome, welcome. And where there's stuckness, that means there's something that's coming into your awareness that you're trying to say, get thee away, Satan. And it's that resistance or that pushing it away or that fight, flight, freeze, or fold, that's the problem.
Is that old saying, what you resist persists? Yeah.
People think, well, I either push it away and try to annihilate it, or it will do the same to me. So that's, I think, people's representation. There's not room in this here self for the two of us. So, sorry, my American side is coming out. You know, so we can understand they're sympathetic to why people shut down or why people start treating something harshly, but we have to appreciate what the consequence of that is in the long term. That when you're opposing or fighting or any sort of negativity towards something, it creates more negativity. So we're saying, what are the alternatives? And as a child, we don't have the alternative to, in a centered way, be able to say no to violence, but welcome to what that energy is. So that's what we're exploring in terms of this third way of creative nonviolence.
And in fact, you can almost be pretty certain that somebody who's sort of meeting these places with that kind of negative energy, that's how it was met in them. So they're just passing on that when they brought it into the world, it was met with this, you know, resistance, this judgment, this, you know, shame. So that's the only way they know.
It was there before you were there. before your ego developed, that transgenerational curse was there. And I think the vast majority of struggles people have that they really have difficulty making any shift with, you inherited them. And so they're deeper than your ego mind.
You didn't create it to begin with, so it's difficult to uncreate, you know.
So just to review, to conclude for today, we're talking about these 4 steps. And, you know, as you're saying, Andy? Yeah. Andy's saying, wow, we're just going through it again and again and again. It's great. And I was saying, do that for another 100 years. Because we're saying whatever is there, first step is drop underneath it. That's why you're centering. Because if you're at that sort of the ego drama level, you just get smashed by it. And so it's like there's a place deeper underneath it, boom, boom.
And when you are in really a coach state, it's always new. It can never not be new if I'm in the present and in the flow. So that's what's so interesting about it. It isn't the same thing. No coach state is ever the same twice, because exactly that thing, I'm now in the present.
In Aikido, we're always taught that if you're trying to throw somebody and you can't, it's not that they're stronger than you, it's that their center is lower than yours. And so what you're thinking, oh, the reason I can't extend with this is because they're down, they're on they're holding center. So you think, stop struggling here, drop your center down, connect your elbow, and then just move your center out. And it's a miracle. A lot of times you can't believe it for a number of years. Like that person just flew through the air. And you say, you just gave that to me. And I said, oh, I was giving you exactly the same resistance, but you were moving me from your center. So there is a place deeper than the intellect. I'll meet you there. That's the first thing where you go to the place that's then for the coach field, you have this place that is bigger and beyond the coach.
Exactly.
And I don't mean like this, but
I think your batteries looks like it's. There we go. So we're training our mind and our eyes to be peripherally dominant. Okay, no focal. In that case, the mind, you're trapped by the problem. So you go down and your peripheral awareness becomes dominant. And so I can be with you, but as I open to you, I'm not trapped by you. So that's what we're doing with the coach field. And that we realize that can be done in 10,000 different ways. We say when you meet a challenge, first thing to remember is you want to connect beneath it and then connect beyond it. So now I'm in a bigger space than whatever that is. I'm holding it from a bigger space. There's more options. So beneath and beyond.
And then there's a sense of what's this? What is it that you want to bring of yourself into the world? What is it that you want to sing, that you want to speak into the world? And again, if you think, well, it looks like this or it sounds like this, it's not going to be that. And then you just got some habit with it.
Steve, the batteries, they can't hear you. It's red. It's turning red. It's the batteries low. It's turning red.
Well, I don't think I'm.
It's green, but it goes to red in a little bit because you don't turn it off and it does.
It's staying green. Let's see.
Well, hold this one, and if it goes
so
red.
10,000 ways, but one of them will be true for you at any given moment. So we cannot assess that with our rational mind. We have to open and feel when that is spoken, I feel it. when I speak from that place, everything else quiets down. And that's an interesting challenge, you know, how to let go of everything but your truth. You know, there's a lot, you know, so it's a simple idea. Come here often?
He's there. He's
Just
being.
hanging out.
So, and this another thing, Andy, it's one of the things where we say the practicing of this coach state, because the thing that gets me into a coach state in one context isn't going to work at all in another context. All these things that work great with me and my clients, no matter what state they're in, I get with my wife, and those all go out the door.
Or what you did with
other
one
set of
client, you
strategies.
think, now I understand what a coach state is. And you say, I'm going to apply this to the next client. Or, how many of you have kids? How many of you have mastered parenting? You can only laugh, right? How many of you have intimacy partners or have ever read about people's intimacy partners? Okay. How many of you have mastered intimacy relationships? How many of you have mastered how to love your partner? Right? It's ridiculous. You realize, right? Every time you have to find it anew for that person, that day, that moment.
Which is why Erickson said, I don't know, but I'm curious to discover what's possible now.
So when we have this sense of the discipline, and then we realize in order to really make the connection that fits for that time and that place, we have to get out of our head, into our body, into relational connection. Then we can start finding it. And you figure probably 90% of your attempts will fail miserably. You know that about yourself, right? That almost everything you try to get into a coach field won't work. Don't take it personally. Like you realize this is what being human is, you know? So I learned everything goes, oh, not that way, not that way. Let's try it this way. Let's try it this way, this, that. And then something clicks. You realize my voice quiets, I'm in. And you think, I hope it lasts a little longer than the last time. But you're in, okay? That's how we coach generativity. A lot of techniques, a lot of methods, a lot of chunks of these different, what we call necessary conditions, but it's something that is created in the present moment. You know, and when you're tracking
and uniquely
that,
in the present moment.
it's just a beautiful, beautiful experience, right? It's just like, this is so great. I'm so happy to be alive. So is that a good note to end on?
I think that's fantastic. I don't know why that thing didn't turn. It must be because you were speaking the truth.
Telling us we were full of shit. Yeah. Okay.
But to be honest, well, it was not showing the mute thing. It was literally like bright red. So that's why I thought. But it's got 7 hours of
But
battery.
he knew, yeah.
So-
Special thank you to Will. He's struggling. Will has done the sound for me and Robert a number of times, and this is the one time because of expenses where he's having to work with their system, and he's a musician, so he's the way sound goes into his body. So I appreciate you. Yeah, he's hearing the ringing in the room constantly. I'm there too, but not like him. So appreciate it.
So tomorrow, as we say, tomorrow's I think going to be a super interesting day. You'll see though, these first 4 steps are so important to be ready to do that skillfully, to do that in a way that where you're able to actually transform the obstacle as opposed to fight against it, deny it, run away from it, wish it was gone. So this, as we were saying on the first day, I think this is one of the more unique aspects of generative coaching and generative change, is that whole approach and relationship with the obstacle. Where we're going to say we need that obstacle in order to have some kind of generative possibility. Excuse me. So that's nothing to sneeze at, but so we'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you for a good day.
Yeah, thank you for a good day. Thank you to our two demos.
Great for 2 days.